it's a range. Like, I know it's not cool. I like David Foster Wallace. I love David Foster Wallace. I've always loved David Foster
Oh
Wallace.
yeah, I want to talk about DFW with you. Yeah.
We can talk. Um, yeah, Marguerite
Andy and I have
Duras.
gotten into some fights about DFW.
Well, he's
Really?
very contentious online too. If you scroll the
Very
timeline,
contentious
I
between us
know.
also.
there's a lot of lovers, a lot of
Say more.
haters. Yeah.
I know there's a lot. I don't. Where are we fallen in the culture? Is everyone hate him still, or is it moved back to some
I don't
degree of
think we read,
appreciation?
so I don't know.
Well, because since he's dead, and
I think we like him now. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
Well, I think there's always there's always that divide. He's a big dividing line in
Well, I think there was
Uh-huh.
a biopic, and now we like him. That's how
Oh, okay.
Yeah, dude.
Got it.
they did the movie. I think it was
Right.
Jason
what did they
Segel.
do? Like
Movie
Jason
with,
Jason
what's his face?
Sudeikis.
It
Yeah,
was
I saw
Siegel.
it.
It was
good.
it
It's
was
fine.
the
It's fine.
Muppets guy. It was the forgetting Sarah Marshall guy who played him.
Jason Sudeikis.
Siegel.
Segel. Jason Segel.
Yes.
Sudeikis is
Siegel.
They're the
Sudeikis
same
is the
guy to
guy
me.
that got cucked by Harry Styles. But yeah,
Siegel.
DFW.
Mhm.
He's a big. I mean, literally, if you guys, if I mean, listeners will know this. If you hang out in any of the social media circles, online in the literary world, kind of, we've already said a little bit insufferable depending on your personality. But like, he trends. He's dead. He's been dead like 20 years now, and like, he trends like every couple months. He'll trend, and there's this huge blow up, and there's like, oh, there's a bunch of people that say, oh, that he's a genius, one of the greatest American writers there, and then there's people that he's a misogynist, he's Mary Carr is telling stories or whatever about how he was like rude, or he was a fucking drug addict too. People forget that. So I mean, I'm sure he had mood swings and all that kind of shit. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to think of kind of a contemporary or from the contemporary period writer who divides people more in DFW. And I like one of the things that, like I said, Lee and I hit it off kind of right away, because he's unafraid. She would just say, be like, yeah, I like DFW. And then, yeah, deal with that, bitch. Yeah, like, deal with
He's
it.
also
What are
probably
you going
the
to
only
say?
one in the
Yeah.
program who read Infinite Jest.
Yeah, probably no, there were a few that liked it.
They read it.
Yeah, yeah, the pretend to read stuff, but
The pretender. Yeah.
I know, yeah. It's like
Yeah.
this. I've never seen, I mean, writers be that kind of loved and hated at the same time. I guess that means you're successful. I guess that means that like you're good if you have that
Right.
many haters and lovers. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just curious. I always wanted to get your thoughts on DFW and how he's viewed, in the culture largely, the literary world. How you personally feel.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, anything. Go for it. Yeah.
I think when I started reading him, he was okay in the culture. People still liked him when I was 20
Worshipped.
and whatever. Worshipped. I think
Yeah.
we were in the worship stage, and there was that cliche of like every guy you would date would bring up DFW or something. I never had that date, but yeah, that was the era in which I started reading his work.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy, heavy, heavy.
Bored.
I may say that the male is entirely hostile. No!
Resources.
Life, friends, is boring. We must not say so.
I'm Andrew Whitstadt. As always, I'm here with Sophie Weiner, and you are listening to Heavy Board. And we're recording this on December 11th, 2022. Today, author Lee Matalone joins us to discuss everything from writing to, well, whatever comes up. This is the first in our interview series where writers come on to chat with us about, well, writing. And anything else we feel like, quite frankly. And I'm very glad that Lee is our first author to come on Heavy Board, because not only is she the perfect person to set the bar very high, the way we like it on Heavy Board, but also because she's my friend. I first met Lee Matalone in the fall of 2016 when we both moved to a city in southwest Louisiana to begin our MFA degrees.
City. Interesting.
Small city.
Sure.
Lee had come from living several years in New Orleans previously, me from never having lived anywhere but Baltimore, my hometown. But soon, I found that Lee and I hit it off. She was also from the Mid-Atlantic area, Virginia, fairly close to where Sophie and I both grew up. a few hundred miles away from one another most of our lives, and brought together through our shared love of literature. How strange the world sometimes is. How small. But there was a specific instance when I knew Lee and I would be friends. It was during our first meeting of the MFA program in 2016. Naturally, we were nervous. Everyone was. We barely knew each other beyond our first names at the time, and we all had to introduce ourselves, one by one. Then, something happened. I can't even remember what it was. Something dumb, stupid, foolish, embarrassing. Lee and I met eyes across the room, both immediately understanding, silently, the ridiculousness of the event we were all forced to sit through. We both stifled a laugh and looked away. Oh yes, I knew then that we would be friends. Lee was the most experienced writer in our cohort. She intimidated even those who had already completed most of their coursework. Already writing a regular column, having many publications of fiction, nonfiction, flash fiction, essays. All the other MFA candidates hung their heads in shame as she rattled off her resume to the room on that first day. She let herself be known, and it was impressive, ballsy. Lee was on the fiction side of things. I was on the poetry side. That awful dividing line MFA programs force on students. And despite that, Lee always had the most impressive knowledge of contemporary poetry out of any fiction writer I'd met. She knew names and books better than half the poetry candidates in our cohort, never afraid to read and pass judgment on a work outside of her genre. A true writing talent. She can see the vision in works of art. Rare, listeners. And looking back on this vague memory now, it seems like that was over 2 decades ago, but it was only a few short years back. And since that fateful fall in 2016, Lee Matalone has gone on to pen her debut novel, Homemaking, published in 2020 from Harbor Perennial. Available wherever books are sold, as well as linked in the description of this episode, listeners. She has been published in many magazines and journals, literary and otherwise, including Denver Quarterly, Hobart, LitHub, Electric Literature, the LA Review of Books, Book Slut, Vice Munchies, and The Rumpus, among many, many others. She taught for several years at Clemson University in South Carolina before leaving academia for greener pastures, and is currently a mentor for young writers at Middle Tennessee State University in their MTSU Write program, where she helps young writers grow and blossom. And of course, Lee is working on many projects where we are all just waiting for the rest of the literary world to catch up with her. Lee, thank you so much for being here. Did I miss anything? Misremember it?
I don't think so. That was very lovely and flattering. And I don't think I remember the first time we met. I'm sort of going back to that awkward classroom now.
Those desks,
yeah,
dude.
Those desks, those desks acting like we were in the 5th fucking grade. But yeah, I was thinking about Lake Charles today and just how absurd that time was. It's sort of incomparable if you haven't been or lived there, like what our day-to-day existence was like. I'm sure Andy has spoken about it quite a bit.
A lot. I, was in a much more, I think, college town kind of situation. Something a little closer. They would still call it a city. I did not agree.
The city you were living in was 3 times the population of Lake
it was
Charles.
Still,
Yeah.
But yes, I heard routinely all of the stuff of Lake Charles.
We texted
and all of the hot goss of the program. I got to tell you, it was such a thrill because no one had anything fun to say in my program except for me. So I heard about you as like the person who was willing to say things.
Oh, okay.
I was a little bit jealous that he had that. Because I would look around the room and I'd be waiting for somebody to make that eye contact with me,
Yeah,
it didn't happen for at least the first year of my program, and then people were like, "I see it now. This is ridiculous."
Yeah, everybody's always.
It did come, but it was also mostly from, also in my case, fiction writers.
Yeah, terrible people.
Yeah, dude. They all are. And you're back in Virginia now?
I am in Virginia. It's strange to be in like a quote unquote normal place. I feel like I've just lived in a lot of strange places. Louisiana is just yeah, not normal. The things you get used to, whether you're in New Orleans or Lake Charles. And now I'm in a very like conventional, safe, like infrastructure, sound, all of that stuff. It's bizarre, but I guess Andy, you're in a weird place. I'm envious of that.
Yeah, it's strange. It's a good place to write, quite frankly. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Vegas.
you're in a weird place that can still feel very normal.
Yeah,
I
it's a
feel
huge
it.
fucking city. It's
You
a
know,
big American city. Yeah.
I feel like the weirdest thing about it is being in the desert and not being from the desert.
Yeah.
You
Almost
know,
everybody that lives here is not from here. But
yeah.
like if you're
Is that
local,
true?
I mean, sure, there's plenty of people that grew up here, but like if you grew up here, it's like I meet more people that moved here than like actually grew up here. And I mean, I taught students at the college here for a while.
Yeah, I
so
was
it's
gonna
like
say like your students
a lot
are
of
probably
them
like
are like born and raised, but then I would say maybe almost half were like came here because of the mining industry, like their parents work in the mining industry, or yeah, like the food and beverage industry, or I mean, there's
Right.
a lot of government because we have the Air Force base here, so a lot of government workers and
Yeah.
I mean the city's huge. Everybody thinks of the Strip in Vegas, but like I mean that's only 4 miles of like
Yeah.
the center of the city, and this city's like over 2.5 million people that living just in this little fucking valley in the middle of nowhere. So it's huge compared to what people think of it. Where you just see like the bright lights. It does look weird though, because then it's just like the only tall buildings are the huge hotels.
Right. Right.
It's like a
I mean, no, you go ahead.
well, it's like a Midwestern city where like there's like no tall buildings at all, and then there's like one.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask about the literary scene. I know you guys just lost The Believer, so I don't know the controversy behind that, but
I forgot that happened.
what's
I was
is
just
there a
reading
literary
about
scene?
that.
Yeah,
We have the Black Mountain Institute here,
right.
so there's some of that, and then it's mostly through UNLV though, for
Yeah.
the most part. I mean, are there literary scenes? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, like
literary-
UNLV is like the Black Mountain School, isn't it?
Right.
Like
it's
that's what it.
it's like an offshoot.
Or they like
Of-
consider themselves as being part of it
I think
or
so.
associated with it.
And I know Amanda Fortini, Walter Kern's wife. She is always we're mutuals on Twitter, and she's always like doing stuff here because she's a Beverly Rogers fellow at the Black Mountain. So like, you really don't do much as like a fellow. You give like a couple readings, and then like kind of you just get the stipend and get to write, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's cool. Yeah, but
Have you gone to events or things in?
I haven't because I lived here for like 4 months before the fucking pandemic ruined everything in the
Right,
world.
right.
Which I want to get to eventually. Yeah, with how that went for your 2020
Yeah.
book launch.
Yeah.
All right, so we're good. We're drinking stuff. I'm drinking some scotch. Sophie said bourbon. Lee said whiskey.
So we're all in the same family.
Very writerly that we're all drinking hard liquor this early in the day.
Liquor. I'm drinking a tea. I'm having water. I just have all the liquids,
Yeah, I have
You
water.
never
I have
know.
seltzer water, and I have some watered down bourbon.
There you go.
Gotta water it down. Yeah,
Yeah,
we like it. Basic bitch is always better.
yeah, that's how I do.
And Leah, I wanted to start this off just pretty simply, just like your background, family life. I know you've written a few essays about this. You've even written some interesting stuff where it's like, ooh, the line between autofiction, fiction, family life, all that kind of stuff.
I'd love to pick your brain on autofiction. We'll get there.
And listeners can find all that online. We'll link it in the description as always. But I just wanted to know, like how did this start? Where you grew up, kind of I know we have similar backgrounds, like I said, the Mid-Atlantic area, but tell our listeners a little bit about your growing up, any traumas, crazy shit, cool shit.
Yeah, let's just get it all out there. We
Make
just
su-
met you.
Yeah,
We want to
make
know
sure
who
you,
fucked you up and exactly how.
List the various traumas on the podcast page,
Mhm.
please.
Yeah, that helps sell
Broad-
books now, dude.
That's true. That's true. I mean, I grew up on side of DC. I had a somewhat conventional suburban upper middle class existence, I suppose. Your
The best
dad is a
kind.
doctor, Andy. My
Yeah.
mom is a doctor. Yes, the
Yeah.
best kind, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
And I went to the University of Virginia, and then I left Virginia. I went to New York and sort of tried to work in publishing and in the book world, and did all the book and magazine things, and kind of hated New York and was like, I don't want to be a part of it. And then went and spent a month or 5 weeks or something in a cabin in rural Maine by myself and read Infinite Jest. Like,
Okay.
didn't talk to anybody really. And then I sort of went down to New Orleans around Halloween and was like, oh, I'll stay a month or so. And then ended up staying 4 years almost. And then went to grad school with Andy. And that's up until grad school. But yeah, I don't know. What's the most interesting or least interesting part of that?
Well, I'm curious. I mean, you said you tried the whole publishing industry thing. I think that's sort of one of the young, aspiring writer goals, right? We all sort of think like, yeah, we could do that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But you also said you hated NYC. Was it the industry? Was it the people? Was it just the general cost of living? All of it? I mean, I'm sure all of it to some degree, but
Vibes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
vibes. I mean, I had never liked it. It never had done anything for me. I think I don't, I was a little claustrophobic, the skyscrapers, all the dirt and the people. And none of it aligned with the things that I value about day-to-day living. And so I knew before I even, stepped foot on Roosevelt Island, which is where I lived for the first month, which is also very weird, taking the tram over. I don't think that's anyone's fantasy of New York living. But anyway, even before I got there, I knew it wasn't a place I loved, but I was like, I got to try this out or I'm going to regret it if I don't just fucking try. So, I think I was like an intern at a fashion magazine, an editorial assistant for my first job, and like got paid maybe nothing or $10 an hour or something like that. I worked at an on-demand publisher for a little while, also very low pay. I worked at a bookshop that's now closed, which was great, in Book Court in Brooklyn. And then I got a job as a production assistant at a big art book publisher, which was the sort of best job. But I just don't like being told where to go and how long I have to be there. So like I had a 9 to 5 and it was like I was living in New York and I was still making no money. And I think after a month I was like, everyone is still just like standing around, wasting a lot of time. Like this isn't an intellectual, at least what I was doing. I'm not saying all of publishing is this, but my experience of it was just like, this is just a normal job and there's no real magic. It's still a job and it's not altogether engaging for me. And I had this incredible, like beautiful Italian boss. And I wrote to her, I was like, I got to get out of here. And she was like, I really commend you for having the courage to quit, which I feel like is sort of the opposite response that I expected. But it's probably bad that she told me that, because then for years and years after, I could barely hold a job for like longer than a year. I was like, I got to get out of here if it doesn't feel right. But anyway, that was sort of my New York experience in a nutshell. I learned a lot from the jobs and from dating bad men, probably more than anything. But,
That's what I hear from a lot of my friends who lived in New York, is that a lot of their experience was, dating bad men. But, and this was before the MFA for you.
Before. I was like 20, 21. Yeah.
Fresh out of undergrad, ready to take on the world.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
A confusing time.
Yeah.
Terrible time, I think. I don't know if you guys had better experiences right after undergrad, but it was very disorienting.
Oh, no.
You get an English degree?
Yeah. I went straight to the MFA after undergrad, but I had a really unconventional undergrad.
Where did you go?
I went to Towson University.
That's where Sophie and I met, yeah.
Right.
Well, we met in community college before
We met in
that,
community college before that, yeah.
We both went to
we both went to other schools, and then we both ended up at community college, and we both met in a writing class, along with my husband, who was in the same writing class. So we all met there. My husband is not a writer. I want to make that very clear. I feel like somehow he doesn't listen to this, but I feel like he'd be like offended if I didn't clarify.
He's become a recurring character on it, though.
Okay, so we can talk about him a little bit.
We occasionally hear him do dishes.
Yeah. Like I said, the ambiance, it's like more, it's good parasocial content for.
Yeah, no, we, I applied to all of the programs right during my last semester, last year, I guess,
I
in
graduated a year
undergrad.
before you,
Yeah.
and it took me 2 years to get into MFA program.
Um,
I got rejected
Yeah.
flat out the first time, like
but
first
I
round.
also, yeah, without the undergrad experience, like I had no idea about MFAs. Like I had no idea that that was even an option until maybe, I was a junior, senior.
Hmm.
Like I had
Hmm.
no idea about what I was going to do after until this option was revealed to me by a teacher. Um, so I'm always curious when someone like goes out of undergrad and then takes some time and then ends up at the MFA, how you were already sort of aware of that. It was sort of,
I
was it something you
guess.
had in mind?
I mean, UVA has a pretty strong MFA program, and so
Yeah.
their undergrad, especially their poetry undergrad, at the time, I don't know what it looks like now, but at the time there was only a poetry concentration for undergrads. Like you could major in poetry, but there was not a fiction or nonfiction track. So you could really intensely study creative writing. So I was an English major with a concentration in modern studies. And then I just took all the creative writing classes and workshops and did independent studies and got a grant, but it was never a formal thing. And so like just being, my teachers were the MFA students and just being in that environment, it's a pretty strong community in Charlottesville as far as literary things go. So I just was always aware of it. And I don't know, felt like it was the thing that you did if you wanted to teach. And I was like, as sort of connecting to the other point, it's like, well, teaching sounds pretty good if you like get the summers off and the winters off. Wow, awesome. So I was like, all right, I guess I have to go and get an MFA to be able to teach. So I think that was the logic.
Oh yes, we were all sold it. Yeah, we were all sold the professor's life. It's a good marketing. I mean,
It's Glen.
yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to know, like, we talked about your background. Lee and I had similar backgrounds, so we hit it off with that right away. Both of our parents were medical professionals. We kind of got that. I wanted to, like, just kind of like this thing, writing, like this thing that we're all drawn to, what drew us all together, what reason we all know each other for the most part. What drew you to writing? Like, throughout childhood, were you a big reader, big writer, comic books, any of that?
Yeah, my mom was a big reader. I don't know if your dad had time or when he wasn't, in surgery was reading, but I remember my whole house was filled with books, and I always saw my mom reading and reading long books and reading good books, not like pulpy stuff, nothing against that, but it was like, she was interested in literary fiction. And yeah, I don't know if it was because of her influence, but even from when I was, 4 or 5, I was always reading, and I felt like I had something to prove, or like I was like trying to suck up as much knowledge as possible, like trying to read books that I didn't understand what the fuck was being said, but like I wanted to read it, and like I wanted to be the person that had read it. Like I feel like it was like a status thing or something, even before I understood what that meant. But there was pure joy in it too. It wasn't just bullshit. So I was always reading, and I was good at writing, but did you guys take AP classes, or did you
I wasn't that smart.
Oh, I was an idiot.
Yeah.
no, well, they always make you do these timed writing exercises. They're a nightmare. And so I don't know, we just fucking had to do that a lot, and I was good at it, but no one was like, you should be a poet or a fiction writer. I don't know where that happened. Maybe in college. I thought I was going to go into politics when I got into VA. I thought I was going to do like international relations. So switched gears a little bit.
Growing up around the DC bubble, dude. I mean, I have
true.
a lot of friends in high school that went on to be lobbyists, that went on to do all that. It's good money in it. It's kind of like the town business, like the company town business, and like when
That's
you grow
true.
up around DC and that kind of within 45 minutes, an hour and a half of DC. A lot of people worked there, but then lived in Virginia or Maryland and all that. And really, it's like people that aren't from the Mid-Atlantic area might not know this, but I mean, yeah, like that area is very concentrated compared to the rest of the country. Kind of like those weird kind of New England area down to like Maryland, Virginia areas, like everything's kind of smashed in there, and you have almost anything you could want. Like there's industry, there's medical professions, you can go into
Right.
all the universities and even writing. But yeah, I'm always curious about that. And like, the studies are always, oh, if you have books in the house, you're more literate. And if you see your parents doing it, Yeah, that's always the case, but it's always crazy. Like writing, is this one thing that's like people look at you like differently, like right when you tell them like, "Oh, I'm a writer," like kind of thing.
Right.
They're
I'm
like,
trying to think of
"Oh."
the like, what do people say to you when you say that? What's the first thing they say?
I
Is
usually
there a
don't. Yeah, I mean, I usually don't say I'm a writer because I have nothing like to say it, but I say I'm like a teacher,
uh-huh.
and then with that, they're just like, "Oh, well, how nice! It's very nice.
How sweet.
How sweet of
Yeah.
you to sacrifice your life for."
You say your
Yeah, yeah.
jobs like they're more impressive than they are. I teach college students. Oh,
Yeah, and then and I don't tell them I'm an
yeah.
adjunct right away. They just assume, so I just let them assume that like I'm like tenured somewhere or whatever.
Well, it's like I was at the dog park today, and I was just talking to somebody about, I was teaching at Clemson or I was LSU. He's like, "Oh, are you a professor?" And I was like, "Sure," but I didn't want to get into the conversation of like, "No, I'm a lecturer. A lecturer means this," and like,
Right.
Yeah, that's a whole thing.
it's a fucking conversation. So, no, I wasn't ready for that.
And most people don't give a shit. Like if you start explaining
Right.
to them how like this like field that's like super niche works, people are like, "Oh, I don't care."
Yeah, also
Yeah.
people love to be like, and a lecture is a really good gig.
Yeah,
It's
and
a
then
really
you're
good
like,
gig. You just
"Oh."
have like a 5-5 load. It's not a big
Yeah, it's
deal.
great.
It's
25K
great.
a year. Yeah.
There's no time for you to write, but it's really good.
Yeah, it's great. It's my charity work and my work.
That's what it is, right? Like the college teaching profession has become this kind of like charity work. Like they expect you to do like charity as part of the
Well,
job.
yeah, it's
Like,
volunteerism.
yeah, volunteer. Yeah. Volunteer your time. Do more.
Yeah.
Go above
Well,
and
you designed
beyond.
this class even though we pay you $2,100 for 16 weeks of work.
Yeah. I mean, I was sort of talking another full-time lecturer recently about this. He'd been doing it a lot longer than me, but we were both just commiserating about the sort of trap of prestige. Like, oh, if you stay here, you're a capital W writer, you're a teacher, you're an artist. Isn't that cool? Isn't that illustrious? And there is the guilt too of like, oh, don't the students need you? And like, you need to like be here and for them. And I mean, it is hard. I mean, I love teaching. I really do. And I love the students and I love my classes and I loved being in that. But it's like, how much can you really
Everything
put up
else.
with?
It's everything
Yeah, it's like
else.
I have to pay my rent. And like,
Yeah.
I would like to be able to get a promotion one day or
Right.
like be rewarded for my effort. Like in other industries in a normal world, like you do a good job, you get a bonus, you get a raise, you get a promotion. Like that's not how it works. Like I have my first real full-time job outside of academia this year and I could negotiate for a salary and I was like, oh, this is a thing that people do. Like you can ask
Shocking.
for more.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't
It's
just
strange.
suck it up and take it and be grateful about it.
Contracts. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's wild.
It's yeah. I mean, it's crumbling. Like it's crumbling. It's really strange how it got this way. I'm not entirely sure.
Well, yeah, and for
But-
just context for like younger listeners who maybe haven't dipped their toe into this yet and are still sort of figuring out like what they're interested in pursuing in the future, I think a lot of us tend to like think of teaching as like this great thing because chances are if you like to write and you like to read, you had at least one really good English teacher that was like, the English teacher for you, right? That was really inspiring. You thought, yeah, I want to be that.
Yeah.
And then what you don't realize is all of the, work that has to happen behind it and all of the pain that goes into it and all of the extra hours that isn't teaching.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Mandy.
I was just the stress of it, like just the stress of having to deal with all that, the bureaucracy behind it too, which is the thing that everybody always just fucking articles every week with. Oh, the bureaucracy, the administration keeps ballooning. And this has happened in a lot of the kind of what you would call the prestige careers, medicine, higher ed, all that kind of stuff, where there's just this ballooning of administrators that are taking the bulk of everything. And then they're just kind of diminishing. But I mean, it's more than that too, because it's like this 50-year trend of eliminating, full-time positions
Full-time.
and tenure just doesn't exist anymore. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah. I don't know what you even need to do, honestly. I mean, it's sort of a trite comment, but like I don't know what you need to do to get a full-time job anymore. How many books by major publishers you need, and like it's
A minimum of one, according to if you want to.
a minimum of one for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But I don't know.
But it's so
sad.
competitive that you have people that'll have 5 books out and they still aren't getting full-time tenure track. So it's like,
Right.
you know, even if you have 4 or 5 books, you've been doing it for a decade and you're still getting handed these scraps because there just isn't anything there. Like the jobs just don't. And I mean, I blame the previous generations because obviously it happened on their watch, but I just don't know. I rail against Gen X a lot with the rejection.
Well, also this wonderful thing happened where suddenly we decided we could all be writers, and so decided we were all going to have a writing program.
Yeah, the ballooning.
And somehow we have to figure out how to make them competitive. And
right.
even now, you know, I mean, what's going to draw your students except somebody who is very recognizable?
The competition is just even the jobs. So like if you have a couple books out, you're applying for a job, great. You're in a stack of like, what is it, over 500 probably now for most of these. If you want to teach in an MFA program, I would say it's probably 500, maybe even 1,000. I don't know. I'm not on these committees. I've talked with a few people that are on these committees and stuff, but it's, I mean, it's a shit, you know, it's a crapshoot. It's like getting into an MFA
and you have
program.
teachers leaving and swapping programs all the time. I mean, it's just all of them moving around, but yeah.
I mean, when I mentor the students that I work with at MTSU, they're usually like a little bit older. They have a lot, you know, they might have a full-time job, they have families, all that's sort of like a low res program, which is an interesting group to work with. But I try to be as honest with them as possible about the reality of getting a job with writing at all, like whether it's like copy editing or copywriting or, you know, trying to get a teaching job. Like I try not to, I feel like it's my duty to be like, this is probably not going to happen for you. Like, I'm not going to, I'm like, I'll fully support and like, be like, if your writing is wonderful and great and like you should deserve, like I write letters of recommendation all the time. Like I'm not against like supporting writing, but also I'm not going to bullshit you about what your career viability is in the writing world. Like I would be a disservice.
It's cutthroat. I mean, it keeps shrinking too. I want to get to this eventually, but we can get to it now. Fuck it. With like just everything's kind of crumbling. Like people aren't buying books. They're not reading books, which is really the big thing. And it just, there's less reward even if you do make it all the way to the end of that tunnel. So like, I say this is the issue with MFA programs. Not necessarily, but like it is this kind of, you know, once you're in an MFA program and you're trying to get to that world, you know, you are competing with even your teachers because the rewards are so few. There's only so many grants. There's only so many prizes. There's only so many publications that happen a year. You're fighting with everybody else. You're in the ring with your mentor, advisor, all of that. So there's this less of this kind of taking you under a wing and like guiding you through this. Like I always say, and I'm interested about this too. I want to get to like how you got your book and all this publication process and all that. But like, you know, even the simple things like, I mean, maybe this is just a fantasy I'm making up, but I always hear like writers of a generation ago, the Gen X writers, they'll say, like, oh, they went to a writing, not even an MFA, just like a good undergrad writing program or something. The professor was working with them for 4 years. They saw their book and they're like, hey, you know, this is actually pretty good manuscript. I'm going to send this along to my agent or my editor or whoever to see what they think, kind of thing. And that would give you that kind of connection into the world that everybody is so hungry and desperate for. And that just doesn't happen anymore. Because if they're going to give you like something to their client, well, it's like taking out room for them to be in the client pool with everybody else. Not that it's like malicious, not that people are doing this, like you can't do it, but like there is that level of we're competing. Like it's not everybody gets to have the prestige or the publications or I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of that, but I feel like the writing world and the MFA world is so competitive and sort of like, I don't know. To me, I feel like there's a false sense of like, there's not enough room for everybody in an MFA program. Like, I don't know if you both feel that way or if it's justified. I'm like, there's like a competitiveness built in that I feel like prevents like honest, like decent relationships from forming in MFA sometimes. It's like, you know, even if one person gets an agent doesn't mean someone else isn't going to get an agent. It's like, you know, like, I don't know. There's just, I try to stay out of it, I guess is the point of a lot of it, because it just feels toxic and like doesn't really make you a better writer, get the work done or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, if you think about just the scene in general, it's rather depressing. So
For everybody listening that's excited to try and do
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
I mean,
Well-
all that matters is the writing. Like, really, at the end of the day, like, I don't want to sum up the whole podcast, but like at the end of a pandemic and publishing a book with a publisher, like a decent, very good publisher, like it's still like at the end of the day, like all that matters is you sitting down and writing and doing the work. Like what anyone else says or how many book sales or like the conversations and social world around it, like none really matter. Like it's just like your personal relationship with I don't want to use that metaphor, the page, but you know, your personal relationship with your writing. That's like, I don't know. I think Andy and you and I have been talking about that a little bit, about just like having that as part of your life regularly and the importance of cultivating that. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like
I-
protecting it. Yeah. Sorry, go on, Sue.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's this idea that like I'm a big believer that anyone, and I hope you can forgive me if you feel this way, but I'm a big believer that anyone who claims that they're like writing for anyone but themselves, like, I mean, obviously, like, yes, we have an audience in mind, right? But I don't think anyone starts writing because they're like, I'm doing this for the good of the universe.
right.
I don't think that
Well,
deep
some.
down.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think that even the people who think that they're doing that deep down are doing it for that reason, right?
Right,
Like, I think
yeah.
that first and foremost, like if you wanted to change the world, like you could go into politics, you could lobby, you could do
Right.
800 other things that would be more useful than writing poems
Totally.
or like a novel. And
Yeah.
I went to a program where it was asserted to me by a teacher that is, you know, that's just privilege, and you know, you basically that's wrong with us. I was kind of like, I think that's maybe disingenuous.
You privileged bitch. You...
What part is privilege?
You know, you write for yourself apparently is privilege. So
Got it. Uh-huh. Okay.
yeah,
Got it.
I was a little bit, so that was always very interesting to me. But yeah, I know I very much agree. It's about really cultivating your own relationship to your writing, and that should be the thing that matters, and it should be the thing that makes you happy or that should fulfill you. I mean,
Right.
obviously there's endless frustration that comes with trying to get published. And I imagine, especially in the world of fiction, I know like it's very different. We've talked about this at least a little bit, right? That for poets, typically you submit and you submit and you submit to for prizes to get your first book published. And in the fiction world, you have the opportunity to go and get an agent. But there's a whole other laundry list of things that you have to do in order to get that agent, right? I'm mostly ignorant to this process. I know, Andy, you've been through it a little bit. You have obviously had some great success with it. I am sort of curious about your road to that while you were at, if I understand correctly, that this was going on while you were at the MFA.
Yeah. My current agent, she reached out to me. I think it was my second year of my MFA, and I had this happen once before, and I think it was just because I have like a very kind of crappy rudimentary website with links to published work, and I don't know who told me that advice, but it was probably one of the best pieces of like writing business advice, like have a website like where people can go. So like I've always published in smaller magazines, and so it was like some small story, and my current agent had just read it and reached out to me. I had my email on my website, and she was like, hey, read this, do you have a novel at all, maybe by chance? And this had happened once before where an agent reached out to me and I asked me that question, and I said no. And so I sort of knew that this was coming, like, okay, I don't know where I learned the lesson, and maybe I think it's probably more true now than ever, but like I knew that like a short story collection was probably not going to get you an agent or help you sell a book. You needed a novel, unfortunately. I mean, I love the novel too, but I was first a short story writer, so it was always sad to me that you couldn't sell a
and
short
most
story
people
collection.
are, right? Most people are in the MFA at least. Like that's
Yes.
from what I understand, that's what they encourage you to write. At least in my program, I know they mostly discouraged long form.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's anyone's fault. It is definitely more difficult just functionally to talk about a novel in a workshop. It's too much, really. So I understand why it would be discouraged. But yeah, I feel like there were a couple of us in grad school who submitted novels or parts of novels and had to break it up, and it is hard to do that. And so I get it. But yeah.
Well, and it's got to be hard as the person who submitted it, right? If you keep having to break it up and you're having people look at it in these pieces, and I'm sure, you're sitting there during it in silence, having to take it and saying, yes, but what about these 3 things from my last submission that you've all clearly forgotten about?
Yeah, it's just kind of a pain to do in workshops, so I get it. But yeah, short stories were always the thing that you were taught. These like the sort of holy grail of writing. Like if you could write a good short story, you'll be revered forever and ever and
You'll
ever.
be Raymond Carver.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. We'll all be Raymond Carver, even if we don't want to be. But so I happened to have like a novel that I was working on in grad school. I started it when I was living in New Orleans and was workshopping it. And I think I got to that point where you're like, shit, I don't know what to do with this anymore. Right. And so it was just fortuitous timing. I needed someone else to look at it. And so I emailed her the draft. And then she read it over a weekend and was like exuberant about it and wanted to talk and represent me. It was sort of a fairy tale, so it's definitely not the norm agent story. I definitely got lucky, but I worked with her for maybe 4 or 5 months on the manuscript, and she was really, aside from my grad school peers and professors, the most attentive person editorially. And that was a really interesting process working with her. And then we went to pitch the book in like right around like this weird time now in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, which is usually a dead time. And it was out like a very long time. And it was so fucking stressful. It was waiting and getting like a rejection or like, we like this, but no.
Right.
And then it just sort of happened around like a couple days before, I think it was a week after I graduated from the MFA or something, because I graduated early. And then what they don't tell you is you have to get approved by like not only your editor, but like all of these other fucking people at the publisher have to be on board and they have to read it. And so that it was like a weekend. It was hell, just like waiting, like fuck. So yeah, then it just happened like right before Christmas and it was great. And that's the Spark Notes version of my agenting journey.
And that is like Lee said, like she's one of the rarer kind of instances of having an agent reach out to you, but like it does happen, listeners. So like just like we said already, like just what matters is you doing the writing. So like, we were in the process, Lee was in the process, just doing the writing, doing the MFA thing, sending out to the magazines, doing the drafts, doing the workshops kind of. And then it eventually something will happen. So either you're soliciting agents on your own or they're coming to you or like there's just a couple of different ways it can happen. Nobody really has the same story, especially now. You always hear like these older writers, like boomer writers and stuff. They'll be like, oh, well, I just kept sending away and got it in there. And it's like, yeah, like that's not quite how it works now, but it's still like it can happen if you keep doing the work. Like it will happen if you just keep doing good work and it kind of,
unless you're really, really bad.
Unless you're just not good. Then you're just not any good.
Well, I'm curious about your guys' relationship to like online publishing versus paper publishing is, because like when I graduated from undergrad, like online magazines, literary magazines were new. Like that hadn't been around, and there was a lot of reticence around like, is this still good to publish a story or a poem in these online forums? And I kind of just like went for it. I don't know. And that's like where I published a lot of my work. Some was like in old school paper, but like I like the online sort of weird things, but I don't know if now that's totally gone away, but that was a part of my like I felt like I could finish a story if I published it, even if it wasn't in like the New Yorker. Like I was like, okay, I can put this away and move on. It's like a CV line, even if it's like something no one's ever heard of. Like,
Right.
which I don't think is generally the advice that like is given. Like, just publish something in a weird place. But I don't know. I just think it's an interesting conversation that I never really talk about with anybody. So I'm curious what you guys think.
They will give that advice to poets.
Mm.
They will say, just publish,
Yeah.
publish.
Mm.
But it's also, I think, a lot easier to get published, at least in journals as a poet. Maybe not in like the top journals, but there are so many out there, and so many that are so very niche. I mean, I imagine the same is true for fiction. But I think because poets have more, it's a smaller commitment, you can submit several things and not be losing an entire body of work like to one place. Also for me, I think when we were in undergrad, online journals were coming in and print journals were starting to disappear. I think that was pretty obvious, or they were shifting to maybe we put out one print copy a year and the rest of it is online. We put it out like some kind of cumulative, this was the best of. And that was a thing. But I think one thing that at least I was sort of torn on was like a lot of the hottest journals that were still like top tier were the ones that were still putting out print. And those were the ones that were going to put you in the hands of the best writers, the writers that were in positions that might get you noticed, and then endless other positions. But that we do still say, like, yeah, more people have access to you if you publish in an online journal.
Right.
Will more people necessarily read you? No.
Well, no.
Is my
nobody reads journals. Yeah. Even writers are not subscribing.
Yeah, people are going to read you if they, see you posted by one of the, it doesn't even have to be like one of the big journals. It could just be a literary journal from a well-known school or like a decent program, right? But I mean,
the thing with these, like, the way like the online, and Lee, we're roughly around the same age, all three of us here. You graduated undergrad around 2012-ish.
2011, winter 2011, yeah.
Winter 2011.
Yeah.
So like around that time this was when the smartphone, social media apps were taking over everything. And this kind of, it was like when we got out of undergrad, the online journals were garbage, right? It hadn't made the switch yet. We haven't done the switch. We hadn't done like where the big time New Yorkers and even like the smaller kind of mid-tier ones they didn't start to switch to online yet, because everything we were still in that kind of transition period. So it is interesting to see this. I think if you want to get read, the online stuff gets you read, because people can just click on it and see it whenever it's up there in the servers, right? You just Google the name, or like Lisa, you have a website, somebody can go to your website and just click on all the little links to the publications, all the little websites that we've got published on and stuff. So that helps. But there was this like rejection of like it's not as good or not as prestigious.
Not as prestigious.
There is something to seeing your work in a printed page. Like I like seeing the printed page, but then it's also like, you write for yourself and all, but at the same time, you don't want to put on a play that nobody sees, right? Like you don't want to just like put on something that like nobody goes to or any of this. And it's hard enough, just
or
getting
like
your friends
publish
and family.
in the magazine that's called like Pussy Trash, volume 42,
Yeah.
Even though they'll take your work,
Right.
The Pussy Warrior Review.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends what your end goal is.
I don't know. I might publish in Pussy Warrior.
Pussy Warrior.
Pussy Trash actually sounds kind of great.
You should start that.
Pussy Trash magazine.
Yeah.
We're always on volume 42.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I guess I always thought that I had an unconventional trajectory to publishing a book with a major publisher, because like I never was good at winning contests. Like I feel like in fiction too, there's a lot of these contests, and that wasn't my world. And then like I never published stories in big magazines, and it was just like, okay. And then I have a book with a major publisher, but it was like that shouldn't really make sense. So I always say, like, and if I'm giving advice, like, every story is different. Like, I can give you general advice, like have a website, like, understand what the teaching academic world looks like sort of broad strokes, but I feel like everyone's publishing journey, so to speak, is so individualized. I don't know. It's fucking crazy. I've heard it's gotten even crazier since the pandemic, which we could discuss, but yeah.
Dude, I mean, I don't know if you still fuck with like Submittable or anything like that still at your...
Barely. I need to be doing that, but I'm...
Well, I just mean with an agent, you get a little bit of like, because I know I see this with young writers a lot, people that'll post in our forums here for the podcast, or just like I'll scroll the timeline and see things, and it's like, when people are like, oh, I got rejected from Granta, I got rejected from the New Yorker, I got rejected from Harper, and it's like, yeah, because you're not getting in those with, I know they say, submit to the slush pile, and you should keep submitting to the slush pile if you don't, but like, you're not getting into those really top tier ones without agent placement, even for poets, guys. All right. Like, if you don't have somebody fighting for you with everybody else trying to get their stuff on those pages, those coveted, 80 pages that they print every month, you're just not going, it's probably not going to happen for you. I think maybe that used to not be the case. I don't know. Maybe before our time, where like you could just mail it in to Louise Bogan and she would publish your poem if she liked it. Right. But like, it's just not, you just have to have somebody in your corner like that. I think everybody does it's frustrating. I mean, we're all frustrated going, and even as Lee's saying, the frustration doesn't end just because of that either. Like, you're still fighting with everybody else now. So now you have an agent. It's like, okay, well now you're just slogging with everybody else that has an agent too, because everybody's going up, and it just gets harder and harder.
I just imagine it's so much harder in fiction just because it's something that is like, I feel like you have to deal with like marketing in a way that I don't think I've ever heard of poets having to, because who are you really marketing to except other poets? I mean, I know you're not supposed to say that, but I find it to be true. I mean,
you have to sort of cultivate a persona, right? On like, sorry to interrupt you at all. I mean, like on I feel like there are plenty of poet personas on Twitter, which is a marketing sort of tactic. I guess it's to sell books. I mean, obviously it's fiction. I think it's genre non-specific, but yeah, I'm not good at that stuff. Like, no one ever coached me at HarperCollins that I should be doing more social media. I think I dated a photographer at one point when I was sold my book, and he's like, you got to get an Instagram. And that's when I got an Instagram, which was like very late. Like, I don't have TikTok. I'm not like, I don't know. And Twitter I find to be very difficult to engage with, like from an emotional perspective. So I don't know.
I turn into a different person when I use Twitter. Yeah. And I become a rage machine. It's really bad.
It does that.
It's really bad.
And Lee and I have texted, just in private conversations back and forth about, things like this, whatever trends, what we're seeing, stuff like that. How's it going? Blah, blah, blah. It is this weird new dynamic in not just the writing world, it's kind of every world now, where like social media has taken over the world. And if you're not, Lee Stein, for listening to the writer, I've heard her on a few podcasts, she said stuff like this, where she's like, yeah, if you're not good at social media, I understand that. Like, it's hard, it's combative. If you get above, 1,500 followers, you start getting death threats in your DMs and shit, no matter what you're saying, like no matter what you're doing on the platform. There's just like reply guys and stuff. And she's like, but like, if you're not doing it, you're not in the attention economy, and everything is the attention economy now. Like, you have to, and it sucks. It's kind of this DIY way of promoting your own shit and like cultivating brands. Yeah. And you can hear it in our voices, listeners. It's like, oh, cultivating brands. Like, oh, I just want to do this.
But I will say, like, one of the number one places where I end up like reading some new poem, it's because somebody I know has posted a poem they either are reading, or it's a journal that just wanted to showcase that this poem in the new issue or whatever it is. Like, that's where I end up reading them. So it is, I think, really useful for that, because I'm a lazy asshole, and also I don't subscribe to any journals because why would I? I don't have that kind of money.
Right. No, I
Um,
think that is a benefit. I was sort of arguing with my boyfriend who's a computer program about the utility of Twitter just today. Like it does connect you to information you wouldn't otherwise access. And that is
Yes.
real and valid. But like you have to shut off all the other bullshit and ego and like
and it's
posturing.
impossible.
That's so hard. I'm just like, fuck it. I'm
Yeah,
not.
no, I'm in the boat
But-
with you. I could not and will not and
And you-
refuse to.
Yeah, you tweet out a link to your book, be like, "Oh, check out my book or check out my new thing," and then
Oh,
somebody's
it's
like,
soul-crushing.
fuck you,
Yeah.
bitch," like kind of like, and you just have to like
And
tune
it
it
feels
out.
so gross.
Yeah.
Just like look at me. I'm like,
Look at me.
I've tried to do it. It's like
Hustle.
I don't know.
You need to hustle.
How do you do it genuinely though? Like that's the thing. It's like how do you sell
Does
a
he
book or
become
market yourself
Matalone?
with that?
I don't know. He's like he really likes to do it. So
Who's that?
Talon,
What
we
is
can
that?
talk about his book Taipei sometime. I had my
Another
own feelings
podcast.
about it. That might be another podcast.
I don't know what we're
talking.
talking about, listeners.
He
I've
also
never heard
has
of it.
a couple collections of poetry. I'll get you acquainted
Is it
with
an
him.
Instagram post?
No,
I haven't
it's
read enough.
it's not.
but-
And I I read him at the same time that I read Ben Lerner's 1004. Andy, if that gives you any perspective.
Okay. The same class.
Yeah, same class. Loved it.
Yeah, I don't hear about any of that. I mean, yeah, it's
We have really positive feelings about Ben Lerner.
Yeah. I listened to that episode.
yeah,
Oh, I'm
good.
really sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if we were offensive.
That was we talked for like 4 hours about this 80-page essay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like this. All right. Going off of all this and this kind of like, all right, making it through like the state of the age of like the industry and how it's kind of crumbling. There's less money, there's less reward. And it's even more competitive than it's ever been. You talked about getting the agent and like pitching the book and how long that took. Like what was after all that, like the galleys, the DIY marketing that a lot of these publishers make you do now? Because again, like there's no money in this, so them giving you like $1 million to market the book and actually get the sales or whatever for the book that they're published, like that's just not happening anymore because the industry just can't sustain that kind of spending on marketing when they're not selling copies. So tell listeners a little bit about what that was like, the DIY kind of marketing, the kind of tours you had to go on, and then I want to get to the kind of your tour being fucked with the COVID.
Yeah, so I sold my book in December, or my agent sold my book, rather, I'll give her the credit, in December of 2018. And so 2019 was all editing and galleys and getting blurbs and all of that part of it. Because I was working with HarperCollins, there was less of a DIY marketing aspect to it. I believe I was sort of assigned an internal publicist at HarperCollins, and I believe there was a stage at which she asked me like who you know, and like getting blurbs process is similar. It's like who do you know that you could reach out to for a blurb, blah, blah, blah. I think I didn't really realize that it was on you to do that. Like, I was like, oh, the editor is going to do it. Like, they do some of it and your agent will do some of it, but a lot of it is on you, which is why now I very much value going to writing conferences, which is where I met a lot of like peers and instructors who did blurb my book. So I forever celebrate like Red Loaf and Tin House and these places because I made these connections there, among other great benefits of those programs. But so like that was sort of DIY. Like I had to figure out like who's going to blur my book and have that awkward conversation. But then like, a lot of it was kind of opaque what my internal publicist was doing. And, this was like a million years ago, like pre-COVID. So I'm trying to think of the questions she asked me. Like she would send me links when things got published. I don't know. I don't even know. I think like a week before the New York Times review came out, she like told me it would happen, but that was like, I didn't know she was going for that. So like, I think it was just very much like not a conversation that was being had with me intimately. And I think Andy and I were texting about this recently. Like, I think one of the biggest lessons I learned from that process is like, you don't get a very much money as like a literary fiction debut as an advance. But if I was to do another book, I'd probably like go out and hire a publicist outside of the publisher to do the work, because I think they're more incentivized to work hard for you. The big publishers just like have too many authors, and like if you're just a debut, they don't have, they're not going to allocate much time and resources. Like I'm grateful what they did, but like they just don't have the bandwidth. So I don't know, it was strange, and like you feel like very small throughout that process of like, oh, I don't know that many people. Like like we went to like a sort of humble MFA program, and like it's not like I'm trying to think of a big famous person. We didn't have like that kind of world. So yeah, I don't know.
The top five programs are a different world than everything below it with MFA. So if you're going to one of the top five programs, if you're lucky enough to get in, or talented enough in a lot of cases, like you get a little bit more out of going to those. It is, and we went to the top 20 program, but it's, well, they don't rank them anymore, right? It's a secret. But even so, like when you're outside of those big, even the big three, really, they just have the resources and the faculty to help you a little bit better along those lines. But yeah, man, I mean,
well, I also wonder what happens. Like, I mean, I have to imagine that somewhere there was like a writer who got published who had no other like major writer connections.
Right.
And like we're like, I'm supposed to reach out for blurbs. What do I do? I can see myself like being in a position where I'm like, I don't have a lot of writer friends. Want me to go to my teacher from 20 years ago? Like,
I've heard stories of like, because like, and the reward is so less. So if you're not going through, if you're self-publishing and stuff, self-publishing used to be a laughing stock. It's not as much of a laughing stock as it used to be in terms of like what you get out of it, because if you can just distribute it through Amazon or something, you cut out a lot of the middlemen, so you're like, you make more money if you actually sell, but then you don't have the marketing and the internal PR and stuff to get your book out there on shelves. You're entirely reliant on the DIY. But I've heard some story like Jared Kopech and some of these people that have flirted with the self-publishing. Like he'd done some stuff with major presses, and then basically got fed up with it and just self-published that book, I Hate the Internet, a couple years ago. And he said like what he did was, he said the most expensive part was paying like 20 grand, like borrowing money to like start this press, to like, he said all the paperwork, all that, the legal stuff cost like 5 grand. He's like, but the 20 grand went to publicist. He's like, you just have, if you don't hire a publicist, you will not sell books. I don't care what it is. If you're like 100,000 followers on social media, like you just need to have a publicist who's pushing that book, pushing it into like, the New York Times sections, the big papers, Wall Street Journal and stuff, where they review books every week, all that kind of stuff. And like that, some of the smaller presses. So something like Grey Wolf, why is Grey Wolf as a smaller press so successful? Well, they have good editors there that pick good stuff, but two, they have a really good publicist team that puts their stuff out there. So this small press gets nominated for all the big awards and stuff, just like the large presses do, because they pay that money for a good public team, like a publicist team, to do all that. And I mean, it's frustrating. I mean, I wish we had good answers. I mean, it's just slogging away at it. I don't know. But some people do it. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No, I was just thinking like, I think a lot of these lessons were just things that you learn doing it. And I wish like I had a coach to tell me like shell out for the publicist, like get a website, like these things that like weren't part of the sort of like romantic, dreamy world of writing. Like,
the ideal MFA where you have like a mentor who is like deeply invested in your work.
Yeah.
That's that's a cool idea.
But also, like, I feel like in the MFA, you're like taught to sort of avoid or shun thinking about the marketing and the business side of writing. Like, and I don't quite understand that.
Yeah, we didn't have any fucking business. There was a couple, like, the business classes, Lee and I have texted about this. Like, you would think some programs would design some type of how to navigate, at least give you some type of advice or structure to start navigating this complex system that's constantly changing. And I mean, right now it's literally crumbling. The industry is crumbling. Like, they're not making money. Like, it's a losing money business. How do you navigate that? And there was we did have to take a class like about
Professional endeavors.
Yeah, professional endeavors. And that was helpful in
Professional
terms
endeavors.
of how to apply to academic positions, what's expected of you in academic positions, and you know, it sounds silly, a lot of stuff, but most people, like, you don't have a fucking clue unless you've started either thrown yourself into it, like Lee said, like literally learning as you go, or yeah, you had somebody who's been experienced in it and actually give you some advice, and you either have to seek that out yourself by like going to your like mentor's office, or in our case, there was a class that was set up for that. Although, you know, people had issues with it, or I mean, everybody just likes to complain about that kind of shit. But yeah,
So the book launch. Tour.
yeah. Book launch and the tour.
Tell us about it.
So my pub date was February 18th, 2020. Let's go back in time to that moment. I forgot what day the world shut down, but it was maybe 3 weeks after that. So I went to New York.
March 13th, I think. Like
Yeah,
March
it was
15th.
it was toward the end of my spring semester, I remember.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. I was in New York for my launch, and it was great. Very fun, lovely, all the things. And then I was teaching at Clemson at the time, and so I did an event at a local bookstore and press. And then I went to Charleston, South Carolina, and did another event that was also very nice. And then I had all these other events planned, which I'll say I set up. No one else set that up for me.
You set it up all yourself?
I think so. And I didn't get any
wow.
money.
Right, yeah.
I didn't get any money.
Yeah, it's a common theme, listeners. No money. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure no one helped me. I did those 3 events, and then everything shut down, and so I think I had like maybe 4 more or something. It was a small like regional tour. They all got canceled, or like they went online. There were a couple like readings I did online, which I could tell you in like March, April, May was not as sort of honed as it is now, the online reading thing.
Yeah.
And even then it's like still kind of sad, I think, for me personally. So yeah, it was weird. I think like even thinking about it a year later, I was like, did that even happen? Like publishing a book, like, you know, because it's like, it's one thing to be a well-known author and you're publishing a book during the pandemic. People still like know who you are and they have nothing to do, so they're going to buy your book. But like the way that people find debuts is they're browsing a bookstore and they see it on a shelf or a table and they pick it up and are like, okay. And so I like didn't have that experience. So it was, I don't know. I don't feel bitter about it. I mean, why would you feel bitter about it?
Right.
But it's just like a strange, like it fell into the abyss of everything, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds kind of surreal.
For
Sounds
sure.
like, yeah.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine. Yeah. And then you have all that like excitement and hype, and then you're like running off that momentum, like it's there, and then that wall comes down. And like you said, you even had to set up a lot of the events yourself. Like it's just kind of this.
Very DIY.
Yeah, I don't. I guess it's just because nobody cares about books. Like there's like this small little niche of people that care about books. I don't know, but yeah, I can't imagine how awful that was in terms of having to do online reading. I mean, we've been to readings.
Online
we talk
readings.
about readings. Readings in person are sometimes hard to get through, and then
Yeah.
like if you take that to the point where you can wander around your house and stuff while somebody's reading from their book, it's just,
Yeah.
I can't imagine how not awful like you said or bitter, but just like kind of how like what the fuck's going on, like kind of how the fuck is this, like is this a book launch, like like is this
Yeah, exactly. Did that happen? I mean, there's an interesting, my friend who I'd been through a different writing residency, she had a book come out, so she sort of mentored me a little bit through the process, but she told me about this Facebook group called like 2020 debuts, and there's one for every single year. I feel like it's mostly fiction, maybe, but it's sort of like a support group on Facebook for people that are going through the process. They ask questions. It's actually really great. It still exists. And people will post like, here's my second book I sold, whatever. But you really like, you saw people who are having their books come out in like May 2020 or like October 2020, and you're like, they got to do nothing. Like they didn't have a debut, like they didn't have a launch. So I felt lucky that I even had a couple events, but
right.
I don't know, it was weird.
Yeah, God, that has to be.
Yeah.
I think it sort of, again, placed the emphasis on like, all right, publishing is cool, but ultimately, like, you're going to be in your house writing, and that's really it. That's it.
That's really what it's about. Yeah.
Getting a $2,500 check to spend like 2 years working on a novel, like to spend like 2 years slaving over a novel. Like, here's $2,500 and you're gonna do all this yourself. Thanks. We're gonna take 45%.
Oh my God. I was just talking to my boyfriend about that, like who was talking about like how some programmers will like spend a weekend building an app and sell it for like 20 grand. And I was like, well, I worked like 5 years on a book and I maybe made that much, maybe less. So I was like, no big deal. I'm not bitter about it.
Yeah, we've talked about this on the podcast. Listeners know, like, if you're writing literary, like, it's a rough road. Like, we're the George Saunders of the world. Is that even a path people could take anymore? Like, to get to like a George Saunders level or something? Like, I don't know if that exists. Like, if that, like, a path you have to basically forge your own path. Like, I'm sure you could get there,
and I think a lot of it,
roadmap. Like, there's no roadmap anymore.
And so much of it is about like stylistic preferences too, right? I mean, I don't know what your I will, maybe we'll get into this next. I don't know what your particular literary influences are, Lee.
Yeah, we should actually. Yeah, what are your main writing influences? The people you admire, styles, stories, like the things that shaped Lee Matalone, like the style, your literary style, and.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I've always been drawn to lyrical writing, or writing that really had an emphasis on sort of like the poetry of a sentence. I always teach this essay by Gary Lutz on sort of like when I'm teaching creative writing or something in fiction, it's really about making the words in a sentence like sort of sing to one another and bounce off each other, and like that's the work that I'm drawn to. And so I was always I studied with a lot of poets in undergrad, and so and poetry was heralded at UVA, unlike maybe in other places. So I think it was always a part of my life. And like weird poets too, or esoteric, or poets that are doing weird, hard stuff like Anne Carson or something that's like difficult. I don't know. I liked that stuff when I was younger. And Maggie Nelson, of course, I like. Hilton Als is probably one of my favorite writers, like writers that try and like do weird things and sometimes fuck up and like aren't afraid to take risks, and it's not always the cleanest thing, and like writers that are moving between genres. And Scott McClanahan is one of my favorite living writers, like people that are very much like adopting a voice and persona in their work and like aren't afraid to play with style a little bit. So I don't know, it's a range. Like, I know it's not cool. I like David Foster Wallace. I love David Foster Wallace. I've always loved David Foster Wallace.
Oh, yeah. I want to talk about DFW with you. Yeah.
We can talk. Marguerite
Andy
Duras.
and I have gotten into some fights about DFW.
Well,
Really?
He's very contentious online too. If you scroll the timeline,
Contentious between us also.
There's a lot of lovers, a lot of
Say
haters.
more.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot. Where are we fallen in the culture? Is everyone hate him still, or is it moved back to some degree of appreciation?
So I don't know.
Well, because since he's dead, and
I think we like him now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think there's always there's always that divide. He's a big dividing line in
I think there was a biopic, and now we like him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, dude.
Got it.
They did the movie. I think it was
Right.
Jason
did they do like
The
Jason
movie with,
Sudeikis?
what's his face? Yeah,
It was
I saw
Siegel.
it.
It was
good.
the
fine.
the
fine.
Muppets guy. It was the forgetting Sarah Marshall guy who played him.
Jason Sudeikis.
Jason
Siegel.
Yes.
Sudeikis is
Siegel.
They're the
Sudeikis
same
is the
guy,
guy
right?
that got cucked by Harry Styles. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. But yeah, DFW, he's a big, I mean, literally, listeners will know this. If you hang out in any of the social media circles, online in the literary world, kind of, we've already said a little bit insufferable depending on your personality, but like, he trends. He's dead. He's been dead like 20 years now. And like, he trends like every couple months. He'll trend, and there's this huge blow up, and there's like, there's a bunch of people that say, that he's a genius, one of the greatest American writers there. And then there's people that he's a misogynist, he's Mary Carr's telling stories or whatever about how he was like rude, or he was a fucking drug addict too. People forget that. So I mean, I'm sure he had mood swings and all that kind of shit. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to think of a kind of a contemporary or from the contemporary period writer who divides people more in DFW. And I like one of the things that, like I said, Lee and I hit it off kind of right away because she's unafraid. She would just say, be like, yeah, I like DFW. And then, yeah, deal with that, bitch. Yeah, like deal with
she's
it.
also
What are you
probably
going
the
to say?
only one in the program who read Infinite Jest.
Yeah, probably no, there were a few that liked it.
They read it.
Yeah, yeah, they pretend to read stuff, but
The pretender. Yeah.
I know, yeah, it's like this. I've never seen, I mean, writers be that kind of loved and hated at the same time. I guess that means you're successful. I guess that means that like you're good if you have that many haters and lovers. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just curious. I always wanted to get your thoughts on DFW and how he's viewed, you know, in the culture largely, the literary world. How you personally feel. I mean, yeah, anything. Go for it. Yeah.
I think when I started reading him, he was okay in the culture and people still liked him when I was 20 and that worshipped. I think we were in the worship stage and there was that cliche of like every guy you would date would bring up DFW or something. I never had that date. But yeah, that was the era in which I started reading his work. I believe he actually, right before he died, he got a fellowship at UVA and was going to go, but didn't go, obviously. So I think there was part of that lore there.
Because he famously hung himself, listeners that don't know. He printed out his last novel, put it on the toilet next to him, and then hung himself. So that's having a tragedy like that, the end of your life, kind of boosts your literary reputation. I mean, in the 20s, we romanticize suicide, we romanticize alcoholism in this field a lot, and I think that does. I mean, he wasn't stupid. I don't think that's why he killed himself, but I mean, I don't think he was completely ignorant to the fact that like you do build your legacy if you're a big star, and there's this tragedy at the end of their life or whatever. Like I said, I don't think I'm not saying he planned that. Like, of course not. Like, but yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. I'm just trying to think of what story I first read. I think I read Good Old Neon, that story and that collection. I don't know who even put me onto it, but I think I appreciated again, like the ambition of it. Like, even if it wasn't always like hitting, it was like just something. I had never experienced anything like that as a young person or a young writer or someone who was trying to push themselves in that maximalist way. And it wasn't even a way I identified. Like, I am much more of a minimalist. I can't write long like that. So it wasn't like, oh, I commiserate or empathize from an artistic perspective, but it was just like, wow, this person is really taking chances and like being messy. And sometimes this work kind of sucks, I think. Like, and sometimes it's just brilliant. And and I think there's sort of a variety of his work. You know, you have this sort of like very intellectual and heady stories, and novels, but then you have a story like Incantations of Burned Children, which I think was published in Esquire, and is a piece of flash fiction. It's might be one paragraph that runs for 3 pages, and it's like lyrical and dense and fast and just one of the saddest things I've ever read. And like every time I read it, I cry. And like that's really what I want when I read. I want to like cry or like feel something. And that story does that for me. And so I just appreciate his range and like, I don't know. There are just not many people like that. Not many creatives like that.
I mean, and he's smart, you know, I mean, like whether you like him or you hate him, I think, at least for me, like that was one of the things that, you know, you mentioned this really early on, like you were reading like you had something to prove when you were younger, right? And I think a lot of young writers, you know, even at least like into their 20s, 30s feel that way. I still feel that way. It's what we talk about on this podcast. It's why we have it, you know, we're like ashamed of all the things we haven't read. And I think with DFW, the thing was like everyone understood how smart he was. He wouldn't have been such a massive phenomenon had he not been so brilliant, I think. And so like whether or not you like him or not.
And it was high-minded.
It was like that thing. It was like, I have to have read David Foster Wallace or what am I trying to do? Like I have failed as a writer if I have not at least done that.
He had that like high-minded aspect, like you guys were saying, but there's like a little level of grunginess to him. And I get okay, like the '90s, and like he wore the flannel and the headband, the bandanas and shit.
The bandana.
I just said, I know he was going bald. I understand that and all that kind of stuff. That's a painful thing, dude. We talked about this on our own episode, listeners, where we get into hair plugs. I don't know how we got it, but it was like. you know, he had this grunginess on top of this high-minded literary stuff that he's writing articles for the New Yorker, and then he's writing about doing heroin. Like he's just writing about these things. Like I know a lot of guys fall to, because the stuff he writes about addiction, the way he would write about sex, from the male perspective and things like that. Like it's, and then also stylistically, nobody else is DFW, right? Like he is that guy. And then he had so many, like you said, the range. He was doing journalism. He was doing, the first thing I read by him was the Sophie Armin, this dumb nonfiction class, and this is community college. And I remember I had a real hard time with that teacher. That teacher hated me.
I hated that teacher too.
Because
I made that very clear.
Always that guy that was, well, hold on, like kind of in the class. But I read, Supposedly Fun Thing, I'll Never Do Again, that collection. And it is so unique. Like nobody else can do that. Like people copy it. They can try to copy it. They can, be inspired by it. But like literally like DFW is so uniquely DFW that it's just, and like Lee said, it's so rare. Like like there are thousands of books published every year. Like we don't read most of them, right? But like when you read his, like that is an experience, like, and we talk about this all the time. Listeners know, like, the visceral reaction Lee was describing, like being moved to tears, being moved to laughter, being moved to any of these deep, like, resonance, this visceral resonance inside you as you read, like, that's your judgment marker, like, and he is able to get that out of so many people in the positive and the negative kind of thing that, like, yeah, what more could you ask for from, like, a literary icon? I mean, I wonder too, like, could that even be achieved now with the literary landscape and kind of the crumbling of the industry? But yeah, I don't know.
Well, he was like the sort of last iconic figure before that could just put out work and you would read his work and judge the work on the merits of the work. And now it's like you have an icon and you're like looking at their Twitter and their Instagram and all this other stuff you put out, and it's like the work even becomes tertiary or something, or even less important than that, and I don't know. I wish I was more of an adult, a cognizant being during that period where you could still just like write a book and like that was it or something, It seems strange that was even a time.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about that a lot. I mean, the changing, not just the landscape and the business side of it, the industry, but like the cultural significance of what DFW was doing. Yeah, put out a book and people would judge it on the literary merits. There wasn't this like personality. There wasn't like, mostly it's politics now. I mean, it's like you put your politics out there on your social media thing and then you're judged according to that and not necessarily your body of work or the work itself on the page and all that. And, and that puts writers in a weird position. And now when you're tweeting out or, something to promote your work, not only are you just trying to promote your work, people are taking that as if you're making like political statements that you hold deeply, that you like these deep political beliefs or something. It's like, nah, like that's not how this ever worked until like 5 years ago, dude. Like this is a new
and I
fucking
think
thing.
I heard a lot of this when I was in the MFA too. And maybe this is, I would imagine this is maybe more of an MFA thing, where you would have someone write a character that was maybe not a good person, and it was taken as the stand-in for the writer's actual beliefs and
that's a scandal every week, dude. That's a scandal every week on literary Twitter. Like, we all know it. Like, like that.
So
literally.
You write a character who is not a good person, God forbid either. Like, I mean, and I'm not even talking like anti-heroes. Like, I'm talking about like the villain of the story.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was a main character who was supposed to change over time or whatever it was. I didn't take the fiction workshop, so I just, heard all the cool gossip. And I had one friend who was I think, pretty routinely by a couple of people, it was suggested that maybe he was a bit racist. Because he wrote characters that were racist. Not all of them, but like on occasion there had to be a character who was racist because he also perceived himself as like a Southern writer.
Flannery O'Connor style.
And I found that interesting. Like I thought, maybe like at the graduate level, like we would have an understanding that like, and I'm sure that is there too. Like I'm sure that there are those situations where like you have students that are, writing work that are clearly intended like I to be some kind of stand-in for their beliefs, but I imagine that is a little bit more apparent.
It's something I see with DFW criticism too. Like the haters love to harp on him for stuff other than the writing, other than the work that he left behind. But I don't know.
Which,
not to
yeah,
throw this hot
and
potato
I
at
think
you,
that's
Lee. Just
I
like,
think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, throw me the hot stuff.
What do you think
that was
about?
always just a curiosity about it. Let's talk about racism.
Yeah.
Are you racist?
Already.
Or how do you feel about racism?
Do you like the Nazis?
Are you a fan of Kanye?
Yeah, what was the Kanye question? Do you like Hitler? I can just, get a good soundbite.
Sorry, we don't mean to ruin your career in this interview here. Where you're going to be
we can cut out anything.
Yeah, we can
go for it.
It's okay. My career is already over. I started the last one with 3 Hitlers just to get it out of my system.
Sophie was just like, yeah. We do have the protection though, so we have the Jewish on our side so you can get away with
Jewish.
it. Yes.
The Jewish.
That's in fact what I go by.
I wanted.
I'm Sophie the Jewish.
I wanted to make sure
That's what they call me.
I wanted to make sure I was othering it as much as I could. Like.
I am Jew. As Kanye would tell us.
Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to throw all that at you, Lee, but
No, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is just to talk about current literature a little bit. I don't know. I have a hard time locating things that move me in the same way that are published now because there is so much noise. And I don't find myself sort of like wanting to read older work or something to stay out of it. But then I'm like, I really want to connect to the current conversation, but I have a hard time really like accessing what makes me feel that way. I don't know if that's
that
a
makes
good way of
perfect
saying
sense
that.
to me.
You're
I feel
not
like we
alone,
talk about that all the time. There's like I have that urge all the time to stick to. I mean, right after I left the program, I think that was when like I bought a ton. This is when we were first talking about the podcast. Like I bought all of this Edith Wharton. I was like, this is all I'm reading. This is all I'm reading for like the next year. And that's really most of what I read for the next year. And it was like all I really craved was, and a lot of it was, I guess, fiction. Maybe I was just like, I need a break from poetry for a minute. But I feel the same way. I feel overwhelmed by how much there is in contemporary literature, and not just how much, but like I find myself struggling to connect with it the same way. And every once in a while, I mean, this is true of most books of poetry. It's a rare thing where I find a book of poetry that I'm like through and through at like, there is not a poem in here that I could say is like, meh, and it's rare that I find something that floors me and makes me feel the way, you feel reading Emily Dickinson. I mean, there are a handful of contemporary writers that do that for me. One of them is like Alison Bennis White is the first person that came to mind. But yeah, it's so much noise. And honestly, it's hard to know, I think. It's hard to know what the genuine recommendations are because, again, I think this is just a fact about the literary world is that you're leaning on your friends to promote you, right? It's really rare, I think, that you find a review that is openly critical or as critical of a book as it is praising a book.
Dude, even 5 years ago, dude, like if you pick up even a New Yorker like from 2015, 2014, like there are more critical in the reviews than they are now. And not all the time, but
And I don't mean like, we should be writing reviews that are like, this book is bad, don't buy it. That's not even, I don't think that's what we're saying either. I'm not saying we should all be doing a Halliday and putting out that particular review of Ben Lerner's The Hatred of Poetry, though I don't suppose we did it much more justice. But I do think that there's something to be said for being able to like look at poetry or at any literature. Like it's hard to know, I think, like who's reviewing because this is a
Right.
book that they believe is like you need to read this book. It's really wonderful, or this is my friend and I want to sell their book. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it feels like there's so much noise. It's so hard. Um, I
Well,
mean, you can rely on like the big contest winners
it's like
too,
For
but
poetry.
but I don't always find a home there either.
for
So,
what it is, it's like, and we're not blaming anybody, listeners, either. Like, it's like, how do you blame people for a cultural milieu that's kind of evolved over a decade or whatever to make it what it is? I mean, is it a
it's
combination of
huge.
things, like a combination of the industry kind of not being what it was, not making as much money as it was because the sales are down. So now the editors are worse. Now like the people
Hmm.
inside the publishing house are worse. And maybe are they just publishing stuff that isn't as good, isn't as resonant as some would say? Like, and I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think you brought up a great point, like, because everybody's feeling that, right? I think most literature lovers are feeling something similar right now. At least like this last like 5, 6 years. I don't know what it is. Like it just maybe it's this thing where we're talking about like risk, the ability to try something or try something and maybe it sucks or it fails, like it doesn't quite work. I don't know. I mean, less chance of risk because the industry is not as prone to accepting and absorbing that financial risk to publish an experimental book by somebody like a DFW or I don't know. I mean, a combination of that and then of course the kind of group social media dynamics that we've been kind of talking about this whole time with like it's just part of the industry now is this
Hmm.
dynamics of everybody gets to tell you what they think right away in real time kind of thing, and if a bunch of people are piling on, well, that can affect the publication. We've seen publications pulled, we've seen people losing their contracts, whatever it is, because one person, makes a comment, and you don't even have the text yet. The book isn't fucking out yet, but somebody
Right.
knows or made a
Right.
claim, and then it spreads like wildfire, and the publisher doesn't stand behind the author. They get scared. When in reality, it would actually boost sales probably if they just
Well, and
stood
this is
behind their
something
author.
that's a phenomenon also, I think, with like often bigger names too, right? Like people who are doing pretty big sales.
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, do you see that like, and this is, for both of you, like, I don't know if I see this, and maybe it's just because I'm not reading enough, but I don't know if hear that kind of controversy the same way with lesser known or debut authors.
I feel like it can. I'm so out of the conversation recently, but I feel like what was the book? It was like 2 years ago that it was a white woman who wrote that book about Mexico, and that was her
American
debut, I
Dirt.
think.
American
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 Dirt.
Dirt.
Dirt. Janine
Yeah,
Cummins. I remember it
yeah.
well.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
But it got
And
a
I
lot of
remember.
hype for a debut, unlike most
Right.
debuts. So, yeah.
I
I
would
mean,
imagine that helped their sales
yeah,
overall.
oh, for sure, for sure.
And that's an example where they
Um,
did stand by her. The publisher didn't pull the book because they put. So I think part of we'll get to this. The jealousy, the professional jealousy, I think is a big part of this too. Where she got a big deal. She got a 7-figure deal where they sold the book rights and the movie rights at the same time because she was writing a pop kind of thriller page turner book, and it was set in this Mexico fleeing the cartel to America or whatever is the overall plot. I didn't read the book, but I remember the scandal. It was insane, and there's like you know, they stood by her, but I remember like she was forced to kind of go through these. I remember listening to an NPR interview where it was her and 4 other people all against her. Even the moderator, like the NPR journalist, was not on her side, and she basically just had to sit there and be lambasted, called a racist. Nobody saying that any of this, and she just kind of had to take it. And I guess it did go away eventually, and she's publishing more books now. But it's like, yeah, that never used to happen.
Well, this is
Yeah.
where
new
you see the
thing.
critical
Like,
review. This is where
yeah.
you see a critical, well, I mean, would we call it critical? We would call it, I guess it depends on how we're using the word. This is where I guess we would see like a negative review, not necessarily a review that is looking at it with a particularly critical eye.
There were a lot of negative reviews, and a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's a few journalists that did some work on this that you people listeners can look it up. Like a lot of the reviews, people that wrote them did not read the book. They were saying things were in the book that were not there. Like it was that bad.
Right.
It was
Right.
that bad, and nobody was coming to her defense. Even because if they did, they were you were done. You could lose everything if you did. Kind of.
Yeah. But also it's a great example of there being such a chasm between like literary people and lay people's opinions. Like normal readers don't give a fuck about this stuff. Like they were still buying and loving the book. And then like this small
They want to be entertained.
Yeah, and like what and so it's I don't know. People just like to scream about things sometimes.
I remember that because it was a huge deal in the literary world, and that's who was mostly getting upset about it, which is why they were doing all these NPR segments and stuff. And then it was like, or my mother, like a couple months after the hoopla settled down, she was like, "Oh, I'm just reading this great book. It was on Oprah's book club, And my mother's that type of reader, and she's like, "Oh, I got American Dirt," and I was like, "Oh yeah, like yeah."
Well, it's like the J.D. Vance book too, Hillbilly Elegy. Like,
right.
I read that one, and I was like, all right, but it was huge. That book was huge, but like literary people hated it.
Oh, everyone was teaching that book at the school I went to, the MFA.
And I think
really,
Well, it was in Kentucky.
Became not okay. Oh yeah.
Oh no, I was in Kentucky. So
okay.
So the Appalachian kind of
right claim to fame.
But I mean, it's a lot of this jealousy too. You saw it with that too. So I'm sure Vance got a big book deal on that because he went to Stanford, probably knew people. He's not a writer, right? He wrote this fucking memoir. People were pissed that this guy, this non-writer, got an advance and then got sales, so then got checks after the initial contract, which is rare, right? So everybody gets upset about that. I think you saw this. Who was that writer that wrote Sweet Bitter?
Oh,
what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
Anyway, she blew up. She blew up with that first book or whatever. And when you read a lot of the reviews, they were so focused. She got a nice big 6-figure advance, which is incredibly rare. Top 1% of 1% in the industry, right? Especially because she's doing like a literary kind of work. Like people were obsessed with the fact that she got a bigger advance than everybody else in the field and she needed to pay for it, right? Or she didn't deserve it, or she needed to be taken down a notch, or I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just human bitterness, jealousy, like we can't do anything about those things. But
but if you're just like engaged in that conversation, if you're on Twitter all the time and like just reading all the stuff, it's like it's only going to stoke the fire and make you more bitter and angry. And what does that have to do with writing?
Oh, what does Twitter do but make you bitter?
I don't know. I mean, I use social media, but it's like at a certain point, it's like, what benefit is it to you to be so angry about things you can't control? I don't know.
Especially about books. Like this is a fictional fucking thing. Like it's made up. It sits on the shelf, and then now we have to pretend that it's like some catastrophic, like world-ending thing. Somebody published a book. Like
it's like, entirely possible, Andy, that it hurts someone's feelings.
Yeah. And I think that's like. This is a good segue, I think, when we move into like the corporate side of writing, where we've talked about it already. We talked about the publishing industry, but this kind of other side of like, even universities are part of the kind of corporate side of writing. Like there's not a lot of money to be made in poetry, especially. I've talked about this where poetry was usurped by the academy because it was no longer like you couldn't make money, but you could make money in the academy, and that like all the poets got jobs in the academy and published on university presses and things like that. And now something else is happening where social media is big business and it's taking over poetry first. Say fiction and not quite in the same way, although it is happening because fiction still has profitability. So fiction can still be like a business outside of that world, even though that's fading too. But like we've taught the AWP, the Academy, these corporate kind of conferences, like the big endowments that run magazines.
I have questions about AWP. I have never been to AWP. I rejected the opportunity to go to AWP on multiple occasions. What is it about AWP that has the peers of my cohort still getting so hype on the email chain?
I mean, Andy, have you been?
Yeah.
I feel like Which one did you go to?
The first one I went to was Portland, when we were still
Yeah,
getting
we were
funding for our
there.
MFA, and you were in
Uh-huh.
a weird position for that, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about this because you've been in a different position where I was just an attendee, like going there, like 50,000 people that go there, but there's like 1,000, 2,500 people that are on the panels that are the writers that are trying to sell a book, and I know you've
Do
been
we
there.
have the rare panelist?
Well, I
I
mean,
was
I
on
know
a
Lee's.
panel.
Yeah, like Lee's
Yeah.
been there as a student where like you don't have anything you're trying to sell, and then she's been there as somebody that has to be on the panel and have a book that they're
Mhm.
trying to sell with a major press. So you have to sit at
Mhm.
the table, you have to do the signed shit, and I just yeah, the
Well,
emphasis
that
on it
was
too. Yeah.
Portland. I was on a panel. This was before my book came out, and I didn't have a table because didn't have the book out. So I was on a panel. I forgot what the reasoning was. I met one of my fellow panelists, or the person who put the panel together, was someone I met at another writing conference, and he invited me to be on it. And I was like, sure. And it's one of those things that you do because it is a marketing thing, but also like, I mean, you want to support your writers who are supporting you. So
Sure.
whatever. It's a thing. There's nothing wrong with the panels. I think it's fun if you're doing it. As far as a person that's just going, like
Yeah. It's fun if you're doing it. If you're just going to watch the panel, though, maybe
mean,
rethink it.
I'm trying to state this in like a coherent fashion. I mean, I've been to San Antonio, I think, and that's it. Maybe just two. Oh no, what was the one in Florida? Tampa.
Tampa was right before the pandemic, I think. Tampa was the one right before
Okay.
that, or...
Yes, Tampa. So maybe I went to Tampa and Portland. And my justification for going was like all of my friends are going to be in one place. Like all these writers I met at conferences and grad school and whatever, they're going to be here. And how it's like a wedding, like how often do you get to have everybody in one place? So like that's why I went in general. And I ended up always having a great time, like just as a social thing. And especially if your school is paying for it, like it's not going to hurt you to go and like go to a few readings and go get some like cheap books or whatever it is. So like I hate on AWP, but like now as someone who's outside of academia for the most part, it feels sort of very insular to me. Like, and it's definitely aimed at people who teach and work in academia or attend MFA programs or graduate programs. It's not, I don't think, aimed at people who have like a corporate job. And I mean, now that I do have a somewhat corporate job, a lot of these writing residencies that are like 2 weeks or like a month or 2 months or fellowships, it's like, you can't do that if you have a normal job or a family or a dog. It's like, these are only for people who have 3 months off in the summer or in December. And so it's like an interesting shift in my sort of framing of it all. But yeah, I would feel weird going to AWP now. I was texting with some friends that I've been with before. I was like, are you going to go? And they're like, yeah. But I'm like, I don't think I fit in anymore or something. I don't know.
I guess what makes me curious about it as someone who has never attended and, obviously, I had the opportunity to. Generally, like, crowded spaces are not my thing to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really think I'd enjoy it, but I was like looking for reasons why I should go beyond being told that I should go for the experience. And I was sort of given this impression like I'll meet people and, you'll go to all these readings and like you'll learn things but it's like you'll meet people, you'll rub elbows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's sort of what people would
Yeah.
suggest. And that
I mean,
always seemed to me like, okay, sure, maybe you will. But how many people are going to be approaching said person with some great hope of becoming friends or rubbing elbows or getting published? And maybe I'm being overly pessimistic about it. Maybe it's just because like I didn't think that as someone who had no ambitions of writing fiction or really nonfiction, was purely a poet, I didn't see that experience as being like the most useful to me.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm just curious.
I think that I had friends who would go to AWP because they had a meeting scheduled with an agent that they had some contact with, or they had a book out and they needed to meet someone they needed to get a blurb from, or there was a more sort of like
There was a business
side of it. Yes, exactly. And that has definitely worked. I'm not against that in any way, but I think for me, like, it was really about like building a community of writers that are your peers, not necessarily people that are your equals. Like, to me, my writing peers are very valuable to me, not just like so I can share work, but also just to commiserate and like talk about this shit with sometimes. And like, there's very few people ultimately that understand like what it's like to like live in Lake Charles for 3 years, or like be in workshop and like, you know, or be pitching a book. Like, and it's nice to have people to support you through that. And so like, I think these things like conferences and AWP are good for just like reconnecting with your people sometimes. But like the panels and the book fair, like meeting agents, to me, that wasn't why I went. And that wasn't really what helped me or made me feel good about AWP.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what it is. It's really like kind of a social event, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have
Totally.
the friends that are there, either you're
Right.
with a group of your like fellow MFAs and you're going and they are in fact your friends, which like hopefully, and either that or it's like the reunion, right? The group of writers that are, this is the time of year that they see each other.
Right.
And it's always like, I always viewed it is like a showcase of kind of the big names. So it's like you go there and you could rub elbows, like you walk through the book fair and you'll see some big names just walking around there, you know, chatting, people going up to them and stuff like that. So there's that benefit. But yeah, I mean, it can, you know, everyone, the reason I'm always fascinated about writers' opinions on it is because AWP is this one conference where like when it comes around, when it start coming around and you're getting the emails and everybody starts saying, oh, I hate it. Oh, don't you hate being around all these people? Oh my God, it's so awful. And then they go there and they talk about how great it, like it's just kind of this like weird
people like to hate on it.
Well, it's like this weird relationship with writers where it's like this is this kind of big, massive thing that just kind of maybe it was been too big now or something, like it's too big almost, I don't know, but like there's just this big massive thing that kind of orbits around all the writing programs and then aspiring writers and teachers, and for some reason a large percentage of people dread going to it. But then it's also like you said, there's benefits to going. If you want to go there and you want to actually hustle and do some stuff, like you could, but that takes a lot of gumption, right? That takes a lot of chutzpah, as they say, right? Like to just start doing that. Not everybody can do that kind of thing, but
I mean, I think the thing that would be the coolest to me about going would just be to like explore all the books, you know? Like I think that would be just the, you know, the people watching generally. But I am growing, I don't know, your description has me increasingly curious.
I mean,
feel
I
like
think
if it rolls around, if it
Yeah.
rolls around on the East Coast, maybe I would have to check it out.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. I think every writer, especially if you've been to an MFA and like know a person or two, should go if it's accessible. Like if someone's paying for it or it's down the street, like you don't have to go to any of the events or pay for anything. You can just like kind of exist there and see it. Like it's not gonna hurt. And I don't know. Like when we went to Portland, I like stayed on our friend Ben's couch and got to see them and like spend time with friends that I wasn't gonna see otherwise. And so I don't know. I won't shit on it. There are shitty parts, but you can opt out of whatever. It's like choose your own adventure.
right.
So
I mean, this goes into the MFA world too, because I say like that's kind of becoming this corporatized thing. And we've touched on it already, so I guess we can skip over it. But MFA, we talk workshops, experience, we could talk structure, we could skip it at all. Your experience.
What are you interested in about the MFA?
I am
Andy?
curious about your.
I'm interested in every writer's point of view on it, really. Like, because I mean, I have my thoughts on MFA. Like, you know, I don't think it's bad, and I don't think it's there's no malicious kind of setup to it, but there's there's flaws. There's things that MFAs emphasize that I think really discourage young people that are trying to break in. I've talked about on this podcast, like the emphasis on workshops, this kind of obsession with having other people tell you about what they think about your work. And the kind of the maybe too much emphasis on that. And we already said a little bit of like maybe we could get a little bit more business education. But I know, I mean, Lee and I went to the MFA together. We were in the same cohort, so we literally spent the same amount of time like in the same program, and had classes with each other and stuff. But so I imagine it'd be a similar experience. But just overall, listeners, we have a lot of listeners that are just starting MFAs, and then ones that are fighting with the big
Tons of listeners.
slush piles.
Yeah.
To get in for the first time. But just your thoughts, experience.
I mean, I have a couple students I'm working with right now who are applying to MFAs like right now or in the next 6 months, and hyperventilating through that process with like the MFA draft and constantly scrolling.
I forgot about the Facebook page,
right?
dude.
The
Oh my god.
MFA draft
MFA Cafe.
Dude,
yes,
it's toxic,
MFA
dude.
Cafe.
That
It's
shit's
bad.
toxic.
Grad Cafe.
Yeah, Grad
Horrible
Cafe.
place. It was a horrible place to live.
Then there's an equivalent for people searching for full-time teaching jobs too, that you would like always be searching, like who's posting a full-time job. It's like not healthy, but anyway, I think for me, it's like, I don't have blanket rules, like don't apply to programs that aren't fully funded or don't apply to programs that are a year. It's like, I think I have a friend who just finished a Columbia MFA, which is extremely expensive, but like obviously has a wonderful cast of instructors. And like, for him, I was like, if you can afford it and it is valuable to you to stay in New York where you're from, close to your family, and you want to have these connections to these professors, then go for it. Like, go for it. But I have another student right now who doesn't have a lot of resources to put and is worried already about having to eat and like pay for her rent. And I'm like, then do not go to a program because it sounds cool that it is
Don't go to
cost
New
you
York.
$50,000 a year. Yeah, don't do it. There are plenty of fully funded or very inexpensive programs. Like, prioritize, the things that matter to you here. Like, and there's no one size fits all, and like just figure that what out, and you'll eventually do it. Like, I think I applied 3 times to MFAs because I didn't know what I wanted, and each time I learned, okay, I can get in here, I don't really want to go to that, or I didn't get in here, and I don't know. It's just, I don't. It seems so long ago, like you were saying at the beginning, Andy, but I don't know. There's a lot to say about it, but I don't know how to talk about it in broad strokes and like make sure you know what you want before you go, and have an honest understanding of like what your experience will be like and what you'll actually get out of it. Like, have conversations with people who've done it that you actually trust and aren't going to bullshit you. I don't know.
Who have done it recently also.
Yes, exactly. Not
yeah, that's a big
Good
one.
point.
I think
Good
I
point.
think a lot of
Yeah.
people, and I think this happened to us too, right? Like, you work under a teacher who's your mentor, who had like, maybe what we would think of as like the ideal writer experience. We all were community.
Mhm.
We all hung out late at night and we sat outside around
Yeah.
the campfire and we wrote poems and we shared them with each other. And like, that's great. That's awesome. Maybe they did that. That is not my experience.
Sure.
I mean, my experience, I already know, is very different from yours. I mean, you guys even like, I don't know. I hear that you guys partied at all. That was not my experience of my cohort. I felt like the delinquent in the crowd, but I'm particularly curious about your workshop experience. In fact, I am especially curious, and you can decline this. I'm going to throw that out there. I am particularly curious about your worst workshop experience.
Ooh. I can't think of a singular terrible workshop. I think it helped that I did a lot of workshop as an undergrad, so I knew what to expect going in. Like, I wasn't tender anymore. Like, I had been submitting a lot and had gotten rejected a lot, and so I kind of like was ready for that to a certain degree. It helped. But I don't think I think I had that sort of like kumbaya sense of what it would be like your professors had. And I think I was a little like shell shocked by how much vitriol there was, and like competitiveness about things that didn't matter. And yeah, it was hard for me. That part was really difficult for me, because I think like ultimately you should be supporting one another. And it's just like, yeah, there's all this other stuff that gets the social aspect is really complicated.
Oh, the social aspect is huge.
It's the biggest thing, really.
Yeah. It's really all it is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, who does the teacher like? Because let's be honest, we are writers and we need praise. We specifically need the praise of our instructors. We need to be the best in the class, and we need to be the teacher's pet. Right? Like, I refuse to believe that there was a single student in any MFA program out there who wasn't in the same position as me.
Sophie telling on herself here.
No.
Well, yeah,
I need to be
like approval. I mean, I think like that is such an important part of like encouraging you to keep doing this crazy thing that is like, trying to be a writer. It's like someone has to tell you like it's worth all of the suffering, right? Like, and whether you encounter that person in your MFA or before, like wherever it is, like, it is important. And so if you're not getting that, then I imagine that would be a terrible MFA experience. I felt supported by Chris, who was our main faculty member and was extremely generous with his time. And like, I don't have any complaints about faculty necessarily. I think it was just like, we lived in a town where there were no like-minded people. It was like, what was this, Andy, like 20 of us, like across 3 years, maybe less?
22, but that fluctuated because people kept dropping out. But
right.
Yeah. That was not something that I experienced. That's interesting to me. I feel like, but there was also never any threat of not passing.
Well, no, there was never. Yeah, there was never.
No, there was not that.
It was not possible. You would have to you would have to just have no thesis. I think.
We're not going to talk about that happened at ours.
Yes, that has happened. That has happened.
Yeah. Interesting. Somebody just shows up and there's nothing there. There's nothing to turn in. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, yeah, it's not like a bad thing. I know why people are frustrated by it, but it is this kind of, if you want to be in that world, you have to kind of go through it almost. The way the industry has now been set up since kind of the explosion of MFA programs, that if you're not going through an MFA program, you're going to be looked at the other way. You're not going to be passed over for the fellowship or whatever it is. Even if you are a big time writer, if you don't have that master's degree to be able to teach in the program or something, they're not going to put you in there. You see this with a lot of like, in poetry, at least the Instagram has taken over everything. So you see a lot of Instagram people that sell a lot of books, publish a lot of books. It's not very good stuff. We've talked about on this podcast, but they're not getting hired at these jobs or these prestigious places because they just don't have the degree that like literally the state requires you to have to be in the faculty. Yeah. And like Lee said, you go in there and it is this kind of baptism by fire in a lot of programs, depending what it is. If you not understanding that there is these kind of social dynamics that play into it, and you kind of goes back to what Lee was saying, Lee, about blocking out this noise where it's like social media comes into the workshop a lot, especially in more recent years, where they're comparing what's happening in this room to like what's happening out in those timelines out there. People are scrolling and that gets into it. And like you said, it's really not anybody's fault. It's just how, we kind of all fell into this, the way the system is set up, and now we're all just trying to fucking deal with it. Like, I don't know. I'm just always curious. Yeah.
I will say, like with our program, I was very grateful that we got all that teaching experience. I'm pretty sure I would not have gotten a teaching job if we hadn't had a crazy amount of teaching responsibility while we were doing our program. So I think that was definitely.
I think I would have felt lost.
Yeah, it was a lot. We were like teaching 2 classes. Right?
Yeah, 2 every semester for basically your last 2 years, the whole time. Yeah. So by the time you get out of there, you could teach a good 8 to, if you wanted to push it, you could teach 8 to 12 sections by the time you graduated. That's, which is a lot compared to some MFA programs out there. And we did have ours was 3 years where Lee and I went. So we had an extra year to kind of, and then really that does help a little bit, having that extra year to finish the thesis. If you're doing teaching on top of everything,
Right.
you can set that up so that you do have a nice block of time that last year to really get your project done, to the point where you do something like Leaded, where you can, okay, you can do a project you're working on your MFA, and that can become your first book. You know, you can actually do that. And there's, you know, pay to play ones. There's all that kind of shit. Like Lee said, if you're really struggling, then maybe it's not. And you don't need it if you're a fiction writer, especially, and you're not necessarily doing the literary side of fiction. That was always a contention. I know in a few workshops, people that were more into the pop side of things, and they would get reamed for it in like workshops and things. But it's like, yeah, dude, but like they're into like, you know, fantasy or whatever, and they want to be a better writer at fantasy. Like, you know, like it does kind of shut off certain side, because it does focus mainly on the literary. But so if you're somebody that wants to write fantasy novels, do you need to go to get an FA? Probably not. You know, you can go to New York, or you can just do the soliciting and keep working.
I mean, there are also alternatives. There are like other kinds of like online writing workshops that do, you know, specialize in like fantasy writing or in young adult or whatever it is. And I would say also like MFAs are also starting to welcome that a little bit more.
Well, they have to, dude. They got to get those butts in seats, dude. yeah. They got
That's
a machine now, And this,
well, if you teach creative writing now, a lot of your students, your undergrads, are writing genre. Like, it's a minority that is writing literary fiction, which is like, I found that difficult because I was like, I don't read that. I wasn't trained in how to coach a student how to write a plot-driven book about, I don't know, another world. Like that isn't literary. I don't know. So it's like, oh, do we have to start training our MFA students differently in teaching? Like, because it is a different type of writing. The way it works is different, I think, at a certain level. So
it's when structure becomes more emphasized, because you're telling a sequence of events as opposed to the kind of consciousness expansion or playing around leisurely in somebody's head.
Action becomes very important.
Action.
Like pre-plotting, pre-planning, writing things out, which is not how I work, but I don't know.
What is your process like with your kind of how you know, do you get an idea? Do you just kind of fuck around and find out? Do any outlining? Does it vary? Kind of, what's your process with your...
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the lessons of the pandemic was that being out amongst the world and people is a big part of my process. Like, experiencing things, like sitting at a bar and talking to a stranger, like whatever, just encountering human beings in some way. And I felt throughout the pandemic, when we weren't doing that, I felt rather just sort of disinterested in writing, generally speaking. And I really, really had to force myself to sit down every day and just write something, which is another part of my process. I think I've always been a very incremental writer. I can't sit for 3 hours at a computer and just write. This just doesn't work. So like 30 minutes, an hour, maybe, like every day, whatever it is. Like, I'm not good at being that kind of long-winded writer. So, I mean, that's how I wrote my first book, was just like sitting down every day a little bit and paying attention. I always kept a journal that I would like write down little ideas or things, like images or lines I heard or something. And then eventually it just accrues into this thing, and, you know, becomes, oh, I have a thing that could be a novel, or like there were two different things I was working on. I was like, oh, these are connected. And so I don't pre-plot anything. I don't ever know like what I'm going to be doing before I have like the image or the character or whatever it is. And I just sort of like write into the space. So yeah, I'm not like extremely process oriented, maybe is the answer. Like
I said, listeners, a true literary talent at the beginning there, you just dive in, see what happens there, and you make it into something, you mold it, right? She said, like Lee was saying, no, not necessarily plotting all these points, not necessarily writing towards the last sentence or something, but just having at it and letting the mind kind of work its way out. You write yourself into a corner. Okay, well, now you have to write yourself out. Like kind of, that old school, the Norman Mailer stuff. Well, just have at it, see what fucking happens, right? Like just maybe we're going to go off a cliff here. Who knows? We'll see. We'll throw that one out, start a different, like it's and we talk about this on the podcast a lot, like the kind of sense of discovery where it's like, okay, we're using these preset structures, so language, the phonetic symbols and all that, we all have a good understanding of that. But then we're like kind of discovering, like we're using that to kind of map out, or they always, that's the phrase everybody uses in scholarship, the mapping of consciousness or the story or the character or something gets mapped out slowly. But yeah, I'm just always curious, writer's process. Lee said she's got a schedule she sticks to, morning, just chunks at a time. And then, 6 months, 8 months, a year later, you have a novel and you're like, oh shit, like I guess this is a novel now, But yeah, I'm always curious.
Are you a revise as you go person or a revise the full thing fully after, or both?
Both, but I'm definitely I am very slow, and part of that is because I'm constantly revising, which is what they always tell you not to do. I feel like when you're a young writer, just
I'm very much the same. Really, Andy and I have this fight because he's like, no, just get it down. Yeah. Just get it down. It doesn't matter if it's shit. I'm like, it matters.
Yeah. It's personality.
Like I can't.
Right.
Like I can't move on.
You couldn't do it.
Yeah. It's just, I think that's what it is. So I'm always curious about the revision process because I know that is wildly different for everybody. So
I mean, I think just like being okay with revision in some form is important, because I feel like young writers are so against that. Like they don't want to rework and revise, just generally to paint a broad sort of swath of the young writer culture. But like,
I feel like think we're such hot shit,
Well, yeah,
like when we've just written something, we're like, yes, the hottest shit. This is gonna blow up the workshop.
Right. It's perfect.
They're not gonna know. They're not gonna know what hit them.
Yes, exactly. But it's not. Rarely is that true. And so, like,
no, never.
Being okay with tearing it apart. I think that's my favorite thing to teach. Like revision is important, and it's okay. And don't be so precious with your work. Like, learn detachment. Like, you're going to become a good writer by detaching yourself emotionally from the work and like hacking at it and being honest and true to the story and what the story needs, not like whatever your feelings are about it. So, I don't know. Revision is important. That's the takeaway.
Yeah. It's always like, younger writer that's like, oh, I don't want to revise. It's usually not a seasoned writer that's like, no, fuck, you got to revise. Lee, we have a few more questions. I know we're over time. Are you good to chill for a little bit longer? Do you got to run?
I got a little bit more time.
Okay, good. Yeah, the last couple of things I wanted to, the leaving higher ed. What made you decide to take that leap? Because it is scary. I mean, Sophie's considering it now. She's still kind of hanging on. I was kind of forced into leaving higher ed. You did it by choice. This kind of, why is the grass greener?
I mean, I think it was, my hand was forced in a certain way. Like, I was teaching at Clemson for a couple years, and that was honestly a really great gig as far as like full-time lecture gigs go. I got to teach in the honors college. I taught creative writing. I never taught comp, which I can say was no offense to comp students, but the actual teaching the classes is brutal.
Yeah, comp sucks.
Yeah. So that gig was
just gonna move my mouth and not actually have words.
Yeah. All the things that you're saying but not saying, we hear. But then I moved down to New Orleans because I really wanted to live somewhere where I actually wanted to live, which is not something you get in academia. You're sort of just, you go wherever you can get a job. But I was over that. And so I moved to New Orleans and was teaching remotely because this was during the pandemic, so I could still retain my position for a while. And then they said I couldn't after a certain amount of time, and I would have to come back, and I wasn't willing to do that. And so I applied for a few positions that happened to exist in New Orleans and Baton Rouge. And Baton Rouge is about an hour and a half to 2 hours away from New Orleans. And I did get a full-time teaching job there, but it was comp. And it was, I think, the first semester back. And this is a Southern school. And so there was no social distancing. I think the desks were about 6 inches from each other in a basement. And a week into the term, Hurricane Ida hit. And I had to go back and evacuate to Alabama for 2 weeks. And so it was a lot to try to, teach remotely from a cabin in Alabama that didn't have good internet. Also worrying if my home was going to exist anymore because it was a Category 5 hurricane, and also worrying about COVID up to that point, and also making $32,000 a year, I think was what I was being paid. 5 comp classes I think I was teaching, actually.
Oof.
And
Per semester?
all my
That's
yeah.
really not enough for teaching that many.
And I was driving 2 hours one way, and no chance of promotion, sort of the typical lectureship. And I just was like, I can't do this anymore. I think I hit the breaking point, you know, like I can't survive on this. Like I should be able to get a teaching job in New Orleans, all of these things. And so I was like, I just need to be able to, I'm 32 at the time. I was like, I would like to be able to pay my bills.
Right.
You know, it's extremely stressful always be worrying about money. I didn't want to do it. And I love teaching. But yeah, I was like, at that point I started Googling writing jobs that pay over, I don't even know what the number was, like $60,000 a year, remote. And I think like a job working for, it was a government contractor had posted a senior communications job. And I didn't know what that meant, but I read the vague job description and I was like, I can do this. Like, I can do this. And so I just like went through that process and like got a clearance and like security clearance and like did all the things to become a corporate person, and have sort of been doing that for a little while in addition to teaching in this like low res ish capacity. But yeah, sorry for talking a long time, but that's sort of what's happened. But yeah, it has been difficult to sort of detach myself from my identity as like a person in academia that teaches and like talks about writing. And you know, there's no romance to the job I have now, but there certainly is, even if you're like suffering in academia.
How is it like balancing the kind of, I guess you said you're doing remote work for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
How is that like balancing that on top of, you know, getting your projects done, dealing with the meetings, the conferences, you know, the pitch meetings with the agents and the editors, and how is that like when you're balancing that? Is that?
I mean, I'm lucky that I'm still working with my agent on my first book, and I trust her, and I feel just very lucky to continue to have a working relationship with someone who I know that my work is in good hands and that like we have the same vision. She works with poets. She works with sort of lyrical essayists. So I know she's not just like trying to make a lot of money and turn my book into this poppy thing, right, which is rare. Yeah. And yeah, she's great. So
that's awesome.
We've had a continuous relationship, and I've been working on a proposal for a nonfiction book and a set of stories. And all of that has been through, you know, having a manuscript I put together on like a robotics during the pandemic and throwing that out, and, you know, slowly chipping away at this manuscript that I didn't know was going to be a book. I mean, it's been this like long drawn out process of where I didn't think I was writing or didn't feel like writing for a long time. And now I finally think I have a book. So anyway, that's been the general writing process recently, but it's having a full-time job 5 days a week with like, you know, the sad number of days Americans get off, like 2 weeks or whatever. Like it requires being much more regimented about my time and like getting up early and sitting at the desk. And there's been a somewhat of a learning curve with that.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Like, and listeners can hear this, right? Like you see Lee is doing it, like she's doing this, and like you have to have that schedule, like that little, you know, it's a cliche now. The writers will tell you, protect your writing time. Yeah, like you have to kind of stay on that little regiment to get your 30 minutes in before the shift starts, or, you know, you got to clock in on the work from home thing or whatever it is. And it's just, yeah, because then, you know, it's not like you can just do it on the clock because you're distracted, you know, like you can't just like take an hour or something.
Right. But also I think the thing that I've learned is like, be generous with yourself and understand like it's okay if you don't want to write for 6 months. Like it doesn't mean you're not a writer. And like, sometimes your priority isn't writing, or like if you have a kid, like I remember reading something that Christine Scutt wrote about being a mother for the first time and having to like have 10 minutes or something, or go in a closet to write. Like she used to write, have all this time, and then she had the kid and it was crying, you know, it was like, and I think I'm hyper aware of like how these change in circumstances of your life can like totally alter your relationship to your writing. And like, yes, keep a schedule, but also like there's a pandemic and you just want to like go out and have dinner with someone because you haven't seen this person in 8 months and like you want to live, like fucking go do it, like
Right.
if you really want to write, you'll come back to it in some way too, like don't force yourself to do
That's
something
also
you don't
true.
want to do.
I'm curious now that you mentioned it. Like, did you have like a slump like after that first book where you were kind of struggling to get started on the next one or the next
Of
project,
course.
or like,
There was a fucking pandemic.
yeah, like your life ceased to exist as we know it. Yeah,
Well, I remember some people were talking about, I'm sure you heard this conversation about how like creative they were during the pandemic. And I was like, oh my God, no, that is not what I'm fucking feeling at all. Like,
yeah, it's like, yeah, fuck you. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, well, good for you guys. Like, yeah, that wasn't my experience. I think like I said, I was like struggling to find anything I really wanted to write about. I did have this project at some point that I was interested in, but as is normal in writing, like the project fizzled. But I think on like a sort of existential level, I was just like, what is the point of working on something when it, the world can shut down in a day?
Right.
Or like, I think something like, and then no one reads your book, or like, I think at the time, right after things shut down, I was thinking about
what if we all die?
Yeah, well, that's true. But I was like, it was just like the planet is just fucking falling apart. And why am I doing this thing with the illusion that there's going to be a lasting document, or like people are going to know who I am? Like, like there's this self-delusion that happens in writing of like, this is a permanent thing I'm creating. And I think I struggled with that, like the production of an item that will be in a bookstore, or like a thing that will be in the Library of Congress, where it's like, but who is actually going to read that if there's no planet or it's like, so I think I just struggled to find meaning in it.
Right.
Which is hackneyed, but like I was like, why? I'd rather just go for a walk, or like sleep in, or do things that normal people do. I don't know if either of you struggle with that at all, but
oh yeah, I work from home on a very irregular schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it's been really good for me in terms of writing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, during the pandemic, no, I was not. I mean, I also like was not writing for like 2 years after my MFA.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I can't.
That's normal too. I've heard a lot of writers say something like that. MFA takes a lot out of you.
I tried. I mean, I was writing. Like, I still wrote, not as regularly, and it was like a struggle. But yeah,
it does it like. There's been some. Toni Morrison has that essay read about novel depression. Like at the end, there's like this natural novel, like kind of when you're finished with a project. Stephen King calls it like shedding his skin. Like a part of you is off. Like you're just get that away from me. Like I'm done with it, kind of thing. And then there's like this little period that's like just like you're kind of looking for the next project. You don't quite know where to go. But then a pandemic on top of that, where the world ceases to exist as you know it. So you can't just go out to a bar and get some drinks and be like, I just finished this novel. I'm struggling to get the next project or whatever. You literally get dwell on it. Like I'm never going to write anything again. Like, I'm never going to do. The world's over.
In that regard, I would say no. I loved the pandemic for that. I hated going out and seeing people. I loved having an excuse. I loved covering my face. I loved going to the grocery store with my face covered and being like, I don't want you to see me. I don't want to see your ugly face. We don't have to engage. It was stay away from me. Like everything about this was actually really good for me. With the exception of maybe like some sort of hypochondriacal tendencies. But beyond that, I actually really, really liked it.
I can say I enjoyed that too, to a certain extent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very recently, I was like, "Oh man, we're done with masks now."
Like,
sorry.
Didn't want to get rid of it. Sophie knows how I feel about that. I won't even say it. But there's okay. So we hit that. That's all normal. Last thing publishing industry we talked about. I was like, what kind of this, we've been dancing around it, the social media aspect. You have to market yourself. There's more DIY stuff than there used to be. You know, you go through all the hoops and stuff like that. Like, I just want your opinion. Like, what do you think the future of this industry is going to look like? Or, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, whatever. But I just mean, like, you know, where do we go from here? Like, when the books are diminishing in terms of people don't care about them anymore, they don't hold the place that they used to hold in our culture.
Is what he's
Why write?
Why write?
Why bother?
That
Wasn't there an essay written about that?
I'm assuming. I'm asking that question assuming that we're all going to keep doing it because we can't help it, right? Like, we love it, but just like, where does this lead? Like, you have to be doing more than just being a writer almost, it feels like, to even have a chance at success, or we want to call it that, or just like having, like you said, like a document that I was here out in the Library of Congress, registered, it's going to be there for as long as civilization exists, kind of thing.
And only you need to know. You know?
Yes.
That's all that matters.
I just don't know. Yeah, your thoughts, somebody who's experienced more of the industry than we have, like, where do we see it going? Is there, you know, self-publishing or this print on demand, or is the model going to change to this kind of print on demand, so you don't have to print up, you know, 5,000 copies and then be stuck with them when they don't sell? Or I don't know.
I mean, I having worked for an on-demand book publisher, I never saw that take off at a massive scale. So I don't know if that's going to be something bigger than it is now. But I mean, I think there's just, even since I sold my book, I think there's been a lot of tumult in the industry in terms of like how many books are getting bought and how active agents are and how willing they are to read. I think I was talking with a friend now who has a novel out to pitch, and she's just been led on a lot by agents, and I don't think that's really their fault. I just think that there are fewer editors, and all of these publishing houses are merging, and that's certainly not good. There was that great op-ed a few months ago about that, how detrimental that was for writers and the type of writing you would have access to. And I think that's really valid. So I am certainly nervous. I'm not nervous, like I'm worried about myself, but it'll be interesting to see what it's like trying to sell my next book in this climate, which has changed, I think, quite a bit in 2 years. And the walkouts at HarperCollins, I think there's a lot of just like change happening in the industry.
I didn't hear that. The walkouts, what is
I'm familiar with that.
Do you want to summarize, Sophie?
But
I'm completely ignorant about this. This happened.
I mean,
people walked out because of something they were publishing, or contract negotiations, or
pay
negotiations.
I don't know exactly the nature of their complaints and desires, but I know it's because they aren't sufficiently compensated, which isn't a surprise to anybody.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think all of that is good, and things are changing for employees and authors alike. And I don't really know. I mean, I think I am very much outside of like what's going on. I'm not on Twitter really. I have a Twitter account, but I don't use it. I don't know what these conversations are. And I think right now that's better for me to be outside of it while I try to figure out my own relationship to my writing and what kind of person I want to be in the writing community. I think right now, like, I enjoy mentoring and like having an intimate relationship and still being, and like having a small group of friends I can talk to, or like you guys, like having these spaces. But as far as a larger group, I don't know. I've stayed out of it, and I think for now that's healthy. And I don't know. I can't make any predictions about the future of the publishing industry, but I hope that we revert back to a more like openness to experimental work. I would love to see that. I don't know. I just feel like with Giancarlo at Tyrant Books passing away, I think in the past year and a half, I think that's been an awful thing for experimental, interesting voices. And I don't know if anyone's filled that void yet. I don't know, because I'm not so outside of it, but yeah.
I don't know if anybody even can fill those voids like they would have come in, like they did, like Tyrant did all those years ago, kind of come in and start exclusively publishing something like that. You know, you could do that, but it's going to be such a long road compared to what it was even in the 90s if you were going to start a new magazine, or we could talk that, magazine implosions. Like, but yeah, I don't know. I was just curious for your take. Like, yeah, this thing that we're all orbiting around trying to grapple with, because not only are you grappling with the things you always did, whereas like, okay, this is a corporation and you're trying to make art and they're trying to sell the art. There's going to be things you're going to have to give up. There's going to be things they want changed, right? Like you're dealing with a big conglomerate now. So that's always been a part of it. But now it's getting to like that conglomerate is not making as much as they used to.
Right.
They're not
Right.
able to hire as many editors. They're not able, the editor quality has gone down in a lot of places. Yeah, I mean, I see books with typos. We read books on this podcast. Sophie and I find typos all the time in these major presses releases, and it's kind of unbelievable. Like we've
We
reached this
do
point.
also
Yeah.
always aim for the cheapest paperback we can,
That's true. Yeah, but there's just always just
including the
state of it.
occasional print on demand.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, and all. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah. So there is, you know, it looks bleak, but I think like there is like we're in an apex. We're going to reach a moment where we have, like, the industry has to adapt to the new climate in some way, and they've kind of been dragging their feet on it. Well, and it's just well, and also that happens so quickly for a huge corporate conglomerate like a publishing house, one of the big four now, right? Like for them to just pivot and shift to something different, that's going to take a decade. Like they're not going to be able to just shift this huge behemoth like in directions in the water or whatever. So that's going to be a lingering effect over the next decade here. What is publishing going to become? I don't know. But we're going to keep plugging away at it.
Yeah.
Keep
And
doing it.
again, it's going to look different, I think, if you write like prose versus, you know, if
Right.
you write poetry. Unless like you're a huge big name poet, you're probably not getting published by like FSG, for example. You're
Right.
probably, you know, going to Red Hen, going to Tin House, going to one of the places that's going to publish your first book, going to Four Way.
Even
but
those,
yeah.
I mean, you know, that
I mean,
those are dwindling, like kind of like those are like kind of because you have to have an endowment. You
Yeah.
can't. We did this with magazines.
Right.
Lee and I
Yeah.
texted about that big blow up in like the magazine, literary magazine, where it's like, yes, like we have to, you know, people are constantly creating new literary magazines. I applaud that effort. I like the idea behind it. I think people should be doing this, but then at the same time, it's like a lot of them are started by like overzealous grad students that don't quite know what it takes to actually run a journal sustainably, i.e. not losing money and just doing a labor of love thing where like you're spending all of your free time going through this thing, running the website, making sure you book the tables at AWP, paying the
well, and
fees
yeah, and
for
there's
that,
no
like-
running a journal without spending money.
Right.
Right,
So like
right.
this
Right.
kind of, so now the only journals that can
So
survive.
you start from a deficit.
Yeah, well, the only ones that survive are ones that have university endowments that they can glom off of, so they just have money to operate. Or the big ones like Harper's, New Yorker, like the ones that sell enough through subscriptions and donations that they can sustain a big global distribution for a magazine in people's mailboxes every month, you know. But yeah, I don't know if you wanted to talk that magazine or not, Lee. I know we're running over time here.
We're yeah.
You've been very
Yeah,
generous.
no.
I am curious to hear. I mean, this is the you're laughing like I'm gonna say something crazy. I'm not. Start talking about cock and endless balls again.
I missed that episode. I'm gonna have to go re-listen.
Well, little Allen Ginsberg for you.
Okay.
It was mostly about cock and endless balls.
We talked about this gratuitously. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had adequate bourbon to just want to know what you're reading and watching right now.
Reading and watching. I am reading this sort of interesting book that I put down years ago and then I decided to pick up because I can't find anything I want to read. And of course the name is going to escape me, but it's a sort of blend of nonfiction and fiction about women in turn of the century Philadelphia, New York, Black women and their sort of like sexual freedoms and sort of experimentations with romance that was often coded as like socially undesirable. But the way it's being framed in this text as it was a sort of like reaction to the confines of slavery, and this was like a very cool experiment happening in these neighborhoods. And it's sociological. It's based on sociological research, and so a lot of it is. I don't even know how to explain it. I feel like you just need to pick up this book, and I'll like type you the name later. But the style is really interesting. It's not dry. It's sort of a reimagining, and I think it's mostly third person of what these women were doing, like in the bedrooms. Obviously, there was no idea what that actually was happening there, but like it's really evocative and powerful and immersive, and something I needed. And I will get the name of it. Of course, I'm forgetting. But I'm probably watching the opposite, which is a lot of garbage.
Love it. That's what I want to hear.
Since the beginning of the pandemic, my friend in New York and I have had a weekly date where we watch a reality show together.
Which one?
I like that.
We just finished Bachelor in Paradise, which was very rewarding.
Very nice.
And now we're watching season 2 of, oh my God, what's it? Her name? You've seen it on Netflix. She is I could say it. It's not unorthodox. She's like the head of the modeling agency, and she was an Orthodox Jew, and now she's very wealthy and like, works in fashion. What's it called? You know what I'm saying? It's a great reality show.
Is it like Project Runway, or is it like?
And it's more about her life and her daughter's lives post this experience.
I feel like I just recently watched the trailer for this.
You did, because it's being pushed hard. It just came out last week.
I just watched it.
It's extremely trashy, and
I love that.
Yeah. What about you guys? Anything good?
Always trash TV. I mean, I like to keep up with that stuff. I've always been into movies and stuff, so I try to keep up with the stuff prestige TV. But I mean, yeah, dude. I think for writers especially, I've heard a couple writers say this, where they say like, oh, what are you watching? And they ask them on like podcasts or interviews or something, and they're like, a lot of garbage, trash TV. And they're like, because it's just like a way to shut off the brain for like 2 hours, especially if you're fretting over something, you're stuck on something in your work, just like turning on that reality TV show and just letting the brain melt like a little bit, defrost or whatever it is. And
it's essential.
Yeah. And you just get this nice little, I just need to see people calling each other bitch and like throwing drinks in their face or whatever.
I am thrilled. I'm going to watch, as soon as I'm finished with grading, I'm going to watch the new season of Too Hot to Handle.
Oh, yeah. That looks...
Because I love the idea of this reality show where the idea is like, you know, the point is always to watch people trying to fuck. And then you take away that they're now not allowed to. And so that's a really fun thing. I'm enjoying that. I just watched all of Wednesday.
Was it good?
I enjoyed it. I was in a really dark place, so that was a nice single day binge of my life.
Okay.
This is
I'm
everything
glad
I
it helped
needed.
you. It
It
helped
was
you through your
everything I
day.
needed.
Indian matchmaking did that for me when I first got this tooth.
That one is a
last week.
thrill.
So yeah, it was. It really was.
Oof. What is that? It literally just matchmake couples?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Yeah, that's it.
I watch the thing. My wife and I, we watch 90 Day Fiance like every week.
Oh yeah. Of course.
All of the spin-offs, all of it. Yeah. The Pillow
I do
Talks.
too.
That's like our weekly. Like we watch that.
Keeping the romance alive, Andy.
It is nice
Yeah.
when you're watching as a couple and you can talk about how much better a couple you are than like this couple on that like signed up to be on reality TV, sold their soul for like 10 grand to be on like a reality show for like 2 weeks. It's like, I guess you can make a lot of money off of it now. All these people become Instagram stars after and start selling ads and stuff on Instagram and
On Cameo, make a Cameo living.
Cameo, especially the ones that like the ones that are actually coming to America or whatever. So the ones like in Nigeria or whatever, like you can
Yes.
make way more money than if you weren't on the show, like kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like yeah,
the American
it's-
dream.
Yeah, it's kind of it's gotten so big to the point now where it's like you can kind of tell it's fake. like the producer fed storylines and stuff where you're just kind of like, this is fake as shit, right? Like, this isn't a real storyline. Like, am I supposed to believe, like, for the last 2 years their whole fucking storyline is like the same thing that it was in the season they came on, like they're trying to have a baby or whatever? Like, yeah, okay. Two
You got to
years
get hired as their new writers.
Yeah, if anybody's looking, yeah, I'm available. If anybody's hiring, listening, yeah, I'm available. I can do it. Get in that. You ever thought about that? Getting into like the film or television side?
I don't
the
know
writing?
how you would. The people I know who are success in that, they wrote magazine articles that were then sold to film and TV agents. But I mean, I would definitely be open, but I think that might be even harder than selling a novel.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah.
Well, I'm feeling really inspired to like go watch Laguna Beach.
Yeah. We should all go.
Yeah.
We should all go watch Laguna Beach.
Wind down.
Yes.
Thank you for doing
Reacquaint
this.
ourselves with 2006.
Yeah, thank you for doing this, Lee. It's been great. Sorry we went over. Lastly, where can our listeners find you and your stuff? Handles, website. We're going to link your book and all in the description of this podcast, but your website and social media.
The website, I unfortunately have an Instagram, but yeah, you can just click on the page or Google me. It should come up.
We'll link your website then too. Is it leematalone.com?
Mm-hmm.
leematalone.com. And then your handle at Instagram is...
It's embarrassing. You should just write it down. It's something ridiculous.
We want you to say it.
Sax69. Like,
yeah. It's what an ex-boyfriend made for me, and I kept it because it is perfect.
It's Book Slut 69.
You got it. It's Live, Laugh, Lee.
That's good,
Laugh, Lee. Yeah, it's really brilliant. It's the pinnacle of my writing career, I think. But anyway.
A good pun.
But thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy.
Bored.
I may say that the male is entirely hostile. No!
You know.
Resources.
Life, friends, is boring. We must not say so. Are you radioactive now?
Inner.
Resources, American resources.
Being bored?
Some activities are intentional, right?
It shows such a lack of gratitude for life. Bored. I aspire to boredom, I should say.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy.
Bored.
Has you the night sweats and the day sweats, pal? Pal, I do.